It's 900 hours Central Africa time on this Tuesday, the 22nd of December 2015. It's 3 days to go before Christmas. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the first hour. I'm Elvis Preslin. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock, and you have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios here in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. We're also streaming live on YouTube if you miss us on telly, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. But our question for the day is a very important one. It focuses on absent fathers, especially this time of the year when it's time of family gatherings and festive cheer. And we're asking you, how can fathers play a more active role in their children's lives? That is the question we pose to you. You can post your comment on @SABC Newsroom. That is the Twitter handle there. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The Transport Minister and the RTMC are expected to release the National Road Death Toll later today. South African Airways to lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. And the Democratic Alliance MP Diana Barnard's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get into the news, let's find out from Marumo Kakana what's happening on the sports front.
Good morning. A very interesting question you're asking there. I hope we don't qualify as absent fathers because we are here working at this time of the year.
Well, if you're working, that's probably an excuse. But we'll hear from the listeners and the viewers.
Thanks, Elvis. News that you can expect from the sports desk. FIFA presidential contender Tokyo Sexwale appears before a U.S. grand jury to testify about an alleged $10 million payment South Africa made to Jack Warner. And to the football news, Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger says it is too soon to talk about his team winning the Premier League title after they beat the title race rivals Manchester City. And Brendan McCullum will retire from international cricket in February after the 2-test series against Australia. We'll have more on this and other stories in the next hour.
Thank you, Marumo. He will be back a little bit later, so you'll have to stay tuned. Our top story this hour, the Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, and the Road Traffic Management Corporation, the RTMC, will today release the National Road Death Toll in Johannesburg. The RTMC and the Transport Department are meanwhile planning to amend existing laws governing traffic management. As you know, close to 700 road fatalities and 600 crashes have been recorded this December alone. A 24-hour call center is collating the traffic data from all 9 provinces. The information has revealed that most accidents occur between 10 in the evening and 4 in the morning. A combination of drunken driving, overloading, high speeding, long-distance driving and unroadworthy vehicles remain the major problems. Current legislation serves as no deterrent, it seems, to road users. Changes are now in the pipeline.
We now need to look at the alternative means, which is the issue of punishment. To that extent, we're working very closely with the Department of Justice, and early next year, we're convening an agent meeting to fast-track the amendment of the legislation, in particular, the reclassification of Schedule 3 to Schedule 5, where people will, when caught driving under the influence of liquor, or recklessly or negligently, they will then be subjected to a 7 days waiting period before they can apply for a bail. But we are also pushing for a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 years should you be convicted of reckless, negligent, inconsiderate, and driving under the influence of liquor. But at the same time, we are also looking at the reviewal of the K53. We need now to make it more difficult for people to access driver's licenses. But when we mean difficult, we need to put it in context. We want to ensure that by the time a person accesses the driver's license, he's competent, he's qualified, he has taken the responsibility to be a driver.
Johannesburg residents have expressed frustration as vehicle licensing and testing stations remain closed in the city. A strike at licensing offices is in its third week. Workers down tools demanding better pay, among other things.
Closed for business, many motorists turned away. Licensing offices affected include Randburg, Langlaagte, Midrand, Sandton, Roodepoort and Martindale.
It's actually kind of ridiculous. I've been here 3 times in 3 weeks to fetch my license. My temp is about to expire, and I'm worried about getting a fine now, and they still can't do anything. They're not even giving me any answers as to when they're going to be back.
I sold a vehicle, I can't get the papers. The guy that I sold the vehicle to is busy driving the car around. Who knows what can happen?
They must speed up their thing. It's very frustrating, really.
In the meantime, motorists are advised to visit alternative points of issue.
The vehicle license can be renewed at the post office, and the driving license can be taken out at the neighboring testing stations. And a temporary license can also be taken out at any of the neighboring testing stations or licensing office, whether it is Bedford View, Kempton Park, Western area, they'll be able to renew it there.
SAMU members are defying a court interdict to return to work. The union could not be reached for comment. Officials say talks with the Municipal Workers Union SAMU are ongoing, but with no end in sight just yet, Johannesburg motorists will have to go the extra mile to get their vehicle discs and driving licenses renewed. Angwaba Mkunu, SABC News, Johannesburg.
South African Airways will lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. Now, this is according to the National Treasury. That agreement puts a stop to the plans by the airline's chairwoman, Dudu Mnyeni, for a sale and lease back arrangement via a third party. The former finance minister, Nhlanhla Nene, tried to block the deal proposed by Mnyeni, a close associate of President Jacob Zuma. There had been speculation in the media that Nene's clash with Mnyeni was the reason for his removal. Earlier this month, the new transaction means that cash-strapped SAA will no longer be purchasing 10 planes from Airbus. The decision to hold SAA to the deal was taken by the finance minister, Pravin Gordhan. The Airbus agreement was the first major test for Gordhan. He was reappointed as the finance minister last Sunday after a market meltdown which was triggered by Nene's sacking. Last week, Gordhan promised to stabilize SAA and said that he would call Mnyeni as one of his first orders of business. Now, it's that time of the year when caring for pets sometimes takes a backseat. Often, they are abandoned and neglected. The SPCA is appealing to owners to take special care of their 4-legged friends.
The affectionate, needy type, the cute and cuddly, the downright antisocial. Often the bark is worse than the bite. The gentle giants, and of course the perpetual attention seekers. But behind these adorable traits, tales of horror. This crossbreed German Shepherd was found in a shocking condition.
She was covered in ticks and she had a huge, deep cut in her neck, which is caused by tying the animal up.
For Gideon, the connection was instant.
This dog, she had a special place in my heart.
Abandoned or spoiled, pets also have to deal with extreme temperatures this year.
We're battling with a prolonged heat wave, and that really is a major factor. Perhaps the key is responsibility. Anyone who has an animal is responsible.
And adorable as they are, think twice before putting a Christmas bow around a puppy's neck.
Pets as gifts can be easily neglected. The novelty wears off quickly alongside the new toys and games. Kittens and puppies need special attention, especially when they're in a new environment, and more so during the festive season.
Some advice from pet lovers.
We want to take him to the beach, maybe, because he loves swimming.
I've got a few toys that have been wrapped up for her.
Give her sausage present.
They're not called man's best friend for nothing. Make sure you're worthy of their unconditional love. Gillian Pillay, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Are they so adorable? How can you neglect them? Now, to talk to us about this issue, we're joined in studio by Christine Kush. She is the spokesperson for the NSPCA, that's the National NSPCA. Christine, welcome to the newsroom. And
thank you.
Thank you for coming through. Now, it is that time of the year, you know, when it's festive and festive cheer, and everybody want to party, but they neglect their four-legged friends. As the SPCA, why do you think is it that people abandon their pets at this time of the year?
It isn't often deliberate. If you look at even the SABC News yesterday, the number of broken down vehicles, we were having reports of vehicles with trailers of sheep broken down, animals in the hot sun, and being told there's nothing that can be done until the following day. Just look at the road fatalities alone. Almost everybody has an animal of some kind. It might be goats, chickens, pets. Every person injured in hospital has an animal that needs help. So our appeal is to say to people, you're not being nosy by letting us know. You're not spilling the beans on your neighbours, but rather tell us, because if there is a person who's incapacitated in some way, let's rather find out and see if we can help the animals.
Yes, yes. Now, what are some of the alternative ways? Because some people are going away and they leave their pets alone at home. What are some of the alternative ways that people can utilize to make sure that their pets are safe?
It comes back to responsibility and forward planning. We know things can often happen at the last minute, but we're still getting calls, what can I do with my animals? We're going away tomorrow. People need to plan ahead, make sure the vaccinations are up to date. Reputable boarding kennels book up way in advance. But one of the problems is people think that if the animal has food and water, it's being cared for. It's much more than that. There are far more aspects to it. And then we come into the annual bugbear of fireworks. If you have someone caring for the animal, make sure the animals are cared for, particularly on New Year's Eve, when we know there will be fireworks about.
Because animals get very scared when there's fireworks. What do you do in a case like that?
If you think the animals may be scared and you can get some kind of a feeling, depending on how the animal reacts to a storm, speak to your vet. Above all, don't give an animal medication intended for humans. People say, but it worked. It might do, but the long-term effects could be tragic. Speak to your vet. If at all possible, stay with the animal. And cruel or crazy as it might seem, if you do have to go out, and we have our emergency workers who have to be on duty, rather put, if we're talking a dog or a cat, in the bathroom or kitchen, where there aren't any windows at the animal's level that they would jump through in a panic. It's for a short time. Rather be safe than sorry. Animals also run away this time of the year because of the noise and all the crackers that they hear because they're getting scared. What can you do as an owner, pet owner, to make sure that when they are abandoned, that people can actually find them and make sure that they can get in touch with you as the owner? You know, it comes down to identification, but when we get calls saying, my dog ran away because of fireworks, our question is how? The gate must have been open. And we get answers like, oh, we were having a party and, or, oh, we don't let the animal into the house. So it comes back again to responsibility. Yes, we call for anybody using fireworks to keep to the bylaws and regulations. But if you have an animal, there's an onus on you. You can't just blame the firework fiends. Has your dog got microchip identification? Is there a collar and tag? Because we know gates can be left open by people with criminal intent. So it can happen, but just take that extra step, make sure the animal's identified. And identify them. So, and that service available from the SPCA? Absolutely. Microchip identification is recommended because we still get all kinds of nonsense going on, animals being stolen, or an animal that's been found and people saying that's my dog when in fact it isn't. Microchip is tamper-proof, permanent, and it is your proof of ownership. And they can get in touch with their local SPCA? Absolutely, or their veterinarian can assist.
Now, you did speak about a contact number that people need to call, maybe the national number. Can you give us some contact details if people, want to get in touch with you?
Thank you. We'd ask them to have a look at www.nspca.co.za, and that carries the telephone numbers for all the SPCAs in South Africa. Mm-hmm. The problem we're finding this year, people are reporting cruelty or abuse or neglect or accidents on Facebook, by email, and we just don't have the resources to monitor 24 hours a day. Pick up the phone. All SPCAs have a 24-hour emergency service. Emergencies only, please, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not how much is a sausage dog.
Yes.
But use that number. That happens. Mm-hmm. Even if it's the wrong SPCA, so to speak, they can pass it on to the correct one quickly, mm-hmm. and time won't be lost. Mm-hmm. It's old-fashioned, but yes. Pick up the phone.
Finally, just briefly, in 15 seconds, your advice to pet owners.
Take care, be responsible, and remember, they're with you for a long time.
Thank you so much for your time, Christine, and joining us here in studio. That was Christine Kirch. She is from the SPCA National Spokesperson, chatting to us here in studio. And make sure that you do take care of those wonderful pets, because they're with you all year. Why would you abandon them now, during this time when they want to be with you? News from further afield now. Burkina Faso has issued an international arrest warrant for the ousted leader Blaise Compaoré in connection with the murder of the former president Thomas Sankara. Sankara was killed on the 15th of October 1987. That's during a coup that brought his friend and former comrade-in-arms Compaoré to power. Compaoré himself was driven from power last October by crowds opposing his bid to change the West African country's constitution and extend his 27-year rule.
Burkina Faso's President Thomas Sankara, seen here in file footage, was killed in 1987, the year a coup brought Blaise Compaoré to power. Nearly 30 years on, an international warrant's been issued for Compaoré's arrest in connection with his death. An autopsy on a body believed to be Sankara's earlier this year showed it was riddled with bullets. That's adding weight to suggestions he was executed in the coup all those years ago. At least 10 others have been charged in connection with his death. Compaoré was driven from power in October 2014 in an angry backlash against his attempts to extend his 27-year rule. He fled to neighbouring Ivory Coast, where he's now thought to be based.
Now to take a look at comments. Former FIFA President Sepp Blatter and head of the European Soccer Michel Platini have been banned by FIFA for 8 years for ethics violations. Now let's take a look at what you are saying on social media on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. This one from Stefano Di Mera says, Sepp Blatter fighting the 8-year ban. Seve Saldana says, Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini banned for FIFA for 8 years. The best news this morning. And this one from John Chisunza says, Blatter and his boy should have gotten life ban. These suited thugs shouldn't be seen anywhere near this beautiful game of ours, says John. And Rob Layton says, Blatter and Platini are both disgraces to soccer. Now, those are all your comments so far on the Twitter handle. Keep them coming. And, of course, there's also a very important question that we ask you this morning. But first, let's take a look at our picture of the day that comes from Nation FM, and it was captured in Kenya to push for the dialogue between warring parties in Burundi. As you can see there, that viewer pick of the day, Uhuru. Stop support. I am Burundi. I am Hutu. I am Tutsi. As Burundi, what does it says? Bleeds, so do I, says that particular poster there. As you can see, that's our picture of the day. Now remember, you can engage with us on our question, and we're asking you a very important question about absent fathers this morning. How can fathers play a more active role in their children's lives, especially this time around when there's festive cheer and everybody wants to get together and all the families come together? Why do we see this, and how can we then as fathers play a more active role in their children's lives? Let's now take a look at what's happening around the country today, and we start off in Johannesburg, where the Deputy Minister for Correctional Services, Tabang Makwetla, will take part in a search operation at the Johannesburg Correctional Centre. It is believed that over the festive season, prisoners are too desperate to escape. Then in Kimberley, the MEC for Cooperative Governance there, Human Settlements and Traditional Affairs, Alvin Boertes, is expected to meet with elderly residents of Colville and Florianville in Kimberley today. And in KwaZulu-Natal, the Public Protector Thuli Madonsela is expected to meet the KZN Security Cluster to discuss allegations leveled against the police, particularly in the Cleveland's hostel area. Now, those are some of your top stories around the country. Let's take a break now, and we'll be back right after that.
Born with malformation of the limbs, David lives his life to the fullest.
I got this. Let me try on my own. Got on the bed, then start playing soccer in the streets, then like, do this.
He can play soccer, he reads and writes, he's even able to swim, a role model to his peers.
Look at the scripture. It doesn't say I'm a conqueror, it says I'm more than a conqueror.
Join your host Buleng Mulebati on Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Morning Live sets the agenda for the day. We bring you the latest local and international news. We are on the ball with all your sports activities and results. We give you the latest business update.
We bring you the latest weather every time.
Watch Morning Live every weekday morning at 6 o'clock, bringing you everything you need to know before you go. Sharp, tada.
Welcome back. Many children in South Africa grow up without fathers, and many men in South Africa do not play an active role during their children's upbringing. More than 66%, listen to this, 66% of black fathers in South Africa are absent fathers. Now this is according to a 2014 research by Dr. Tawanda Makushwa, but that notion is about to change. That is, if the Cool Dad Foundation gets its way. The Cool Dad Foundation encourages fathers not to be absent or ATM fathers only, but to play an active role in their children's upbringing. The foundation will this year contribute to the call by the international and national community by denouncing any form of violence against women and children. To talk to us more about the Cool Dad Foundation and more, we're joined in studio by Bongani Luvalo, who's the founder of the Cool Dad Foundation. Bongani, a very good morning to you and welcome to studio.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers at home.
Please tell us more about your foundation.
Cool Dad Foundation is a movement of young fathers. We had because of we had experienced absent fathers, some of us in our lives, and having to understand the social ills that are going on in society, we then came to understand that through research, that majority of the social ills are contributed because of the absent father figure in the different households. And also even our own interests as, young fathers, we could see that not many of us actually speak about our kids in majority of the time. And we then thought, let's gather as young fathers, and let's see how best can we spend time with our children. And we had our first picnic in 2013, and that's when we came about to have Cool Dads Foundation. But initially it was supposed to be just a movement, without us having to really understand that there are deeper issues. There are men who want to spend time with their fathers. There are certain problems that are between them and the mother of the child, or because of family setups and so on. So when we came into that picnic, we then understood quite a number of issues. Others, one, don't understand what they're supposed to be doing with their children. Two, others don't have access to their children because of they're no longer in relationships with the mother of their children. Others have decided to be in other relationships where the wife does not allow them to actually interact with them. So it then became a problem of saying, but how do we then reach out more than just asking fathers to spend time? Because of we just had that thing that men just decide not to spend time. But as and when we took time, we then understood that there are deeper issues in society that need to be addressed. So we said it cannot just be a movement of young fathers gathering in a park. Let's go deeper. Then we then decided to start a foundation which focuses on 5 problematic areas.
And talk to me about those problematic areas.
One is the interactions, as I indicated. Majority of us don't know what to do when we're with our kids. Others actually even say that they're babysitting their kids because they just have to sit at home without knowing where to go. So we do interactions, your picnics, your camps, your date outs, movies and so on. We actually giving young fathers ideas on how to spend time with their children. The second part would be the empowerment of a young father, holistically. So we look at different thematic issues through seminars and workshops. How do we sustain relationships? How do we ensure that we create a conducive environment psychologically for a child to actually, grow in a well, set up home? The third one would be a big brother mentorship. There are many boys who grew up like me without a father figure. So there's not that male figure that actually shapes how you must think, how you must act, That's why others don't even know how to treat a young woman because of they've never seen a role model that actually treats their mother, their aunt or their grandmother within a home setup. And the fourth one would be actually the clothing and toy bank, where we are saying we know and understand the levels of unemployment in South Africa. And majority of us, when we buy our kids clothes, we buy toys, in most cases, in 3 months, they've stopped using those things. You're buying new ones, you're forgetting where others are. And we're saying those who are unemployed, let's afford them an opportunity to actually access those clothes, to access those toys, and actually give to their own children. Sort of a bridging measure, because we know that there's nothing that actually demeans a man's, composure or understanding in society than having to be an unemployed man because of you are seen as less of a man. That's how society construes, a well-rounded man in society. And then the fifth one is actually what we call legal counsel and advocacy and lobbying.
Yes.
In that area, we're looking at different pieces of legislation that do not allow a young father or a male to actually do their outmost best in society, their rights and responsibilities. Men think that having to go to a maintenance court, actually it's a place where men are bashed.
Yeah.
And that's not where men are bashed. You've got a neutral presiding officer who actually wants to listen to the stories. What is the woman saying, or what is the mother of the child saying, what is the father of the child saying, and actually come to a conclusion on how best both of you as parents can actually contribute to that. So that's what we are actually focusing on.
Now, fathers sitting out there today who are absent fathers and they want to make use of your foundation and the advice that you do have, how do they get in touch with you and how do they become part and parcel of the foundation? Okay, we've got offices. We can be reached through an email address, info@cooldadsfoundation.co.za. They can also reach us on social media. We've got a Facebook page, I Am a Cool Dad. We also have a website, www.cooldadsfoundation.co.za. Cool Dad Foundation, one word. One word. Bongani, thank you so much for your time and coming in, and all the best of luck with all the absent fathers during this time of the year. That was Bongani Luvalo. He's the founder of the Cool Dad Foundation, talking to us about the importance of playing an active role in your child's upbringing, especially this time of the year. We're also asking you that question today. How can fathers play a more active role in their children's lives? Send us your comments on the Twitter handle @SABC Newsroom. You can also do so via the Facebook page. If you like us there, you become part and parcel of the Newsroom family. How can you become a better father during this time of the year when you want to spend some time with your kids at home during Christmas. As you heard there from Bongani, it's a very important part of your child's life, that upbringing, that you part and parcel of it, even if you're divorced or you separated from your family. So do that now. But it's festive season, and it's that time of the year where families will be setting their sights into buying toys for the little ones. You heard about Bongani also talking about toys. Now, throughout the world, boys and girls prefer to play with different types of toys. Is that really the case? Boys typically like to play with cars and trucks, while girls typically, as we know, choose to play with dolls. But have you ever wondered about the hidden messages behind each toy? For example, Barbie doll. She's blonde, slim, with an hourglass figure. Barbie has a dashing boyfriend. She lives in a beautiful home and drives a top-notch of-the-range sports car. Children long to be like her, and they fall under this misconception that being thin brings popularity and success. Now, to talk to us about some psychological impact that these toys have on the development of children, we are joined from our Cape Town studios by Professor Kupano Ratele. Professor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you.
Professor, I think the major question that we want to pose to you is, can toys really cause long-term psychological problems in children?
Yes, the brief answer is yes, but not just psychological problems, social problems too. We heard from Bongani about the need for toys. And the message sometimes are subtle, hidden, but most times they're just overt messages. You can go to any shopping mall right now, your toy kingdoms, Hamleys, all kinds of toy shops. It's full. And if you pay attention about what parents are buying for their children, you will see that this is not just a psychological problem, meaning it's not just an individual problem. It's a problem in families, in communities, in society. I mean, problem in the sense that it reproduces particular kinds of femininities and masculinities.
Mm-hmm. Now, I talked about the preferential treatment that boys and girls would get in terms of girls would like to prefer toys or dolls, and boys would like to prefer cars and guns, for instance. But is there perhaps a phenomenon such as gender-typical toys, or is it merely a matter of cultural training?
Well, let me show you one particular toy. Here's a Michelangelo. You know, this Ninja Turtles. I mean, if I ask anybody, who is this toy meant for? Most people will tell you that this is a boy toy. You look at the muscles right there. It's a warrior kind of toy, and it tells boys particular messages about what kind of masculinity, what kind of gender they should be. So it's a gender typical toy for boys. And this is a really nice, another toy. And I asked, who is usually to be given this kind of toy by parents? And most times, you don't give this to boys, you give this to girls. And it reproduces a particular kind of femininity, of gender relations, right from an early age. That girls have to be relational, have to nurture, have to support a family. But this is not meant to support a family. This is a man alone, and you tell this to boys that men have to go out and war and fight and be strong.
Professor, how effective, though, are toys in defining those gender roles that we're talking about?
Oh, very, very effective. I mean, I guess the message is if you're going to go buy a toy and then later on complain that our society is violent, that it doesn't allow women and girls to do particular things, that it makes boys and men to be particular kinds of subjects, of persons, when you yourself are buying toys that reproduce that message. So the message is, at least let's be a little bit gender conscious in the way we shop for toys, but also to tell stores. I mean, there are many gender neutral toys. Blocks, for instance. Blocks are everywhere. Legos are really great, but not the Legos with the airplanes and the missiles and all kinds of things that define particular kind of masculinities. So one has to be quite conscious if you're going to raise boys to be particular kinds of boys or girls. And if you're raising children with a view that equality is important, you have to be conscious in the choice of toys you buy.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's always been this debate about violent toys, such as guns, plastic guns.
Yeah.
Does that promote violence? And is there perhaps a sense that there's a link between the two?
Well, there's a lot of research about that, not in our country so much, but in other countries, the US in particular, about the relationship between toys that prompt particular kinds of behaviors and guns have been studied quite a lot. And it looks like, yes, there is a relationship. It's an indirect relationship because it takes a long while to do this. So each year, each day, you buy particular kinds of toys. Of course, you're supporting that boys in particular, but sometimes girls, but mainly boys, have to be people who go to war to protect their families, that guns are important. And of course, the U.S. is important here because the U.S. is troubled by gun violence. So in other countries, in European countries mostly, where you see more gender neutral, of course you see countries like Switzerland where there's a lot of guns, but not a lot of gun violence because they have other toys. They have toys that are also more gender neutral.
Mm-hmm. Talking about gender neutral, Professor, what would now be your advice for the best toys to get a child this Christmas to parents out there?
Well, you know, I've been looking at the toys now. Star Wars is big. Star Wars has some really good gender-bending toys, for instance. But most of the Star Wars toys that they're selling are really the kinds of laser and you know, the toys that we're talking about, which are really not gender-neutral. The best toys for me are, or at least the best Christmas gifts, first of all, are books. I mean, these are really good books. But the books have to be well chosen. They have to be books that support this idea of a society that we want. Blocks, which are called unit blocks or kindergarten blocks, are really nice toys because they teach both girls and boys about spatial stuff, about architecture, about building things. So these are really good toys. I always support buying toys like this.
Professor, thank you so much for your time, and let's hope you have yourself a Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. You too.
That was Professor Kopano Ratela joining us from our Cape Town studios, talking about that gender bias that we sometimes direct our children into, and they maybe should be gender central. That is the discussion there. Now, Democratic Alliance MP Diana Kolobarnat's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. Kolobarnat is appealing her expulsion from the DA. That was after she was found guilty for bringing the name of the party into disrepute and for contravening its social media policy. This comes after Kolobarnat shared a Facebook post calling for the return of former apartheid state president P.W. Botha. Now, for more on the proceedings, which is about to begin, we are joined from Sandton by our reporter Aldrin Sampear. Aldrin, a very good morning to you, and can you tell us why is today's proceeding so important to Diana Kolobarnat?
Well, good morning, Elvis. Yes, today is pretty important to Diana Kolobarnat because it is the Legal Commission that will ultimately decide her fate, whether her appeal, whether she loses her appeal or whether she's successful in an appeal. Because remember that after that controversial Facebook post that she reposted on Facebook, where it indicated and calling on P.W. Botha to return and saying that the state was run far much better than under the current administration, that post obviously landed her in hot water, and ultimately the federal executive then decided to terminate her membership as well as her membership as member of parliament. While she did indicate that, of course, that she will be appealing that, and today is the day that she appeals that, and we haven't been privy to the heads of arguments that have been filed by both the Federal Executive Council, which believes that they've taken the right decision in expelling her and terminating her membership, as well as Diana Kolobarnat. But what we've seen in some media, or some reports rather, is that some commentators have said that the decision by the Federal Executive was pretty harsh on Diana Kolobarnat. But what this then does, it means that whoever makes whatever controversial comment, whether it be on Facebook or on Twitter, as the DA social media policy state, could end up in the same place where Diana Kolobarnat finds herself today.
How important and significant will today's findings be for the Democratic Alliance as an opposition party and for Diana Kolobarnat?
Well, it's pretty significant looking into the municipal elections, going into the municipal elections next year. And of course, you know that the DA has been going through a rebranding and trying to look as try to look as a party that could be appealing to black voters as well, and trying to entice more black voters to vote for the DA. That is something that the DA has been battling with for a couple of years, and now you have Mmusi Maimane at the helm of the DA. Some have said that having Mmusi Maimane there at the helm of the DA would mean that the DA is definitely changing its branding. However, though, having such a post by such a senior member of Parliament and a member of the Democratic Alliance really tarnishes the image of the Democratic Alliance. We had James South, the Federal Council chairperson, also indicating that that post really brought the party into disrepute and will have an impact on how the party performs during elections, and probably that will be tested during next year's municipal elections. I've spoken to Eusebius McKaiser, who's the author of Could I Vote DA, and he said that the municipal elections are not basically about national issues such as racism and so forth, but it's more about service delivery. And if this decision of the Federal Executive of the Federal Legal Commission of the DA decides to overrule and overturn that decision by the Federal Executive, it would then have a huge impact on the DA's image in terms of how do they fight racism and how do they make sure that black voters as well as the black members feel comfortable within the DA.
Now, I know that you haven't seen the heads of arguments as yet, but is there maybe speculation in terms of the argument that Diane Kolobana would put forward in terms of that it was not really her post, she merely reposted a post from somebody else?
I guess that's the other issue. It's the issue around the social media policy of the DA. What does a repost mean, and what does it mean for you and I, for instance? Does a repost mean that I endorse somebody's views, or does it mean that I just want to set the tone or start an argument or start a debate, whether it be on Facebook or whether it be on Twitter? Well, we have seen in the past, for instance, that Facebook posts as well as Twitter posts do get people into trouble. And that's the other issue. Well, Diane Kolobana might argue that, listen, the repost was basically to say, let's have an argument. And that's something else that she put out on her Twitter account after Helen Zille, the former leader of the DA, who's the Democratic Alliance, who is the Premier of the Western Cape, said that Diane Kolobana should apologize and retract that statement, as well as there is no way that you will be able to defend something like this. So it would be interesting to see what arguments the Federal Executive brings forward with regards to that decision to expel her. But what we should also remember is that expelling somebody like Diane Kolobana is that expelling a very senior person within the DA, who was the deputy chairperson of the DA in KwaZulu-Natal. She has been an MP. Her career stretches over 11 years. So it will hamper the DA certainly, and some comments that we've seen as well in social media is that there are divisions within the party with regards to that decision by the Federal Executive to expel Diane Kolobana.
Eldrin, you'll keep us updated in terms of the proceedings in Sandton, and we'll maybe cross to you a little bit later. Thank you so much for that report. That was a reporter, Eldrin Sempier, in Sandton. Now, let's take a look at what you have to say on the Facebook page and Twitter page. People around the world continue to show support for the victims of the violence that's happening in Burundi. Now, the unrest has been going on since an attempted coup in May and protest over President Pierre Nkurunziza's continued rule. Now, remember that you can send us your Twitter messages on @SABC Newsroom. That is our Twitter handle. The first one here from Peter Kavuti. He says, it's not about President Nkurunziza's third term, but the people don't want his leadership. He is not delivering. #Burundi crisis, says Peter. Chris Wanobere says, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It's clear that we've learned nothing from our past. That's from Chris Wanobere. Very strong message there. This one says, pray for Burundi, please. Now, it's an issue that we will continue to watch here on Newsroom. Burundi burns. We all burn. Let's not wait any longer. We know what happened in the past with all the violence there. These are some of your comments on the Facebook page, Twitter page. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. Now let's take a look at what is happening on our Newsroom Facebook page today. President Barack Obama from the U.S. said his administration is open to some legitimate criticism for failing to adequately explain its strategy to counter Islamic State through the, let me try and get this right and see if we get this strange Republican presidential candidates for criticizing his policy without offering an alternative. And let's take a look further. Violence in northeast Nigeria and the neighboring countries targeted Boko Haram has forced more than 1 million children out of school, leaving them prey to abuse, abduction and recruitment by armed groups. The United Nations said that on Tuesday. And finally, the National Treasury says that South African Airways will lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. Now you can find all of this on our Facebook page and the SABC News website. You can go there and find some more. Now let's take a look at some of the front pages around the globe, and we're starting off in Europe. The Times reports that the Special Air Service and American Special Forces were fighting last night to take control of a town that came to symbolize Britain's campaign in Afghanistan after it fell back into Taliban hands, and it says their SAS fight. And the New York International Times says a man-made landslide of mud and construction debris in Shenzhen was symbolic of China's rapid construction and the short life of many of those buildings, which have created problems with the unregulated dumping of construction waste. And still in China, the China South Morning Post reports that the Chinese Defense Ministry yesterday condemned the United States for committing a serious military provocation by flying strategic bombers over a Chinese artificial island in the South China Sea. Those are some of your newspapers, but right now let's take a break, and we'll be right back after that.
Hello, it's a favorite minister here. Yane, party is a very nice language because it was written by you, the people. Here's a good one. Try hard, an individual who tries against all odds. Hoy! Give me water!
Fryhards, keep cool with the case of Costa Light for $179.99 and help make party South Africa's 12th official language. Tops at Spa. Shake things up.
Now, social media plays a significant part in many of our day-to-day lives, and we love to share our opinion on the latest happenings around the world and in our own country. This year, social media was abuzz with the Eskom crisis, the Fees Must Fall campaign, xenophobia, and Oscar Pistorius, among many more news stories that captured our attention. Joining us now in studio today is the Managing Director of ROI Africa, or ROI Africa, Tonya Khoury, who will give us a wrap of this year's social media trending stories. So very good morning to you, Tonya.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you for having me.
Why is it so important to reflect on what was trending during 2015?
I think it's maybe it's important in many aspects because some of the hashtags that trended this year definitely made an impact on the ground. So it wasn't just a conversation that was being had between us on our smart devices. It actually made an impact. Fees Must Fall was a very significant campaign. Roads Must Fall was another one. I see today that Roads Must Fall has even impacted in the UK. They're taking down the Cecil John Rhodes statue. So social media is such a powerful tool and can be, and if you ignore it, it's definitely at your peril.
What does these trends tell us, though, what people are interested in?
People tend to latch onto one or two big stories over a month period, you know. So we tend to shift our attention to something that's close to home, something that makes an impact to us as people on the ground. We saw at the beginning of the year, I think we can see on the screen here, the SONA debate and SONA 2015 made the biggest impact during January and February on our charts. And what was fascinating to watch was how different what played out on our TV screens was on our Twitter timelines. And that was quite significant. And then, of course, Eskom has been trending almost all year, you know, so also quite interesting to see.
Yeah. Now, this was the SONA. Look at SONA. I mean, that's 73%, and all the others that was January and February.
That's right.
What happened after that month, March up until, say, maybe June? Was there another slide that you've got there for us?
So in March and April, we saw the onset of Roads Must Fall, which then resulted in this must fall trend that we've seen all year. You know, it hasn't stopped, and it's also made an international impact. So Roads Must Fall was the biggest story over March and April. Statues must fall overall, and then of course Eskom stayed on the charts as well, making a big dent on our charts.
Was there any particular surprising topic that South Africans picked up, or were these sort of the major trends in terms of politics, or was it why not? Maybe I don't see anything relating to entertainment in the stats that you've got there.
It's very fascinating to see Oscar Pistorius turn up on the charts every time something happens in Oscar Pistorius's life. We've seen him dominate for almost 34 months on media monitoring charts, and to see that sort of longevity on any one story is fascinating. Xenophobia was a very big story as well. Say no to xenophobia, and how the people rallied behind that big say no comment. You know, that made, I think, 2/3 of our charts over a 2-month period. So that was very, very good to watch, and also to see. Oscar Pistorius never ceases to amaze me, Elvis. You know, why we are so fascinated with one man over a period of 34 months is just, I've never seen anything like it, and I still don't quite get why, you know.
I see. Also, a very big one was, of course, Eskom, and that was truly because of all the blackouts that we had, hey?
And people were very cross. People were furious. And, you know, we tend to vent. Firstly, we feel protected behind our social media device, and we feel we can say whatever we like, you know. So people get really angry, they're really forthright, and they want action, and they want it now. And that's the power of social media, you know. So Eskom took a beating earlier this year, for sure.
Is it a good thing to see our audience focusing on news stories that's actually trending and not so much of the celebrity trends that we see?
I think South Africa has we've got so much to talk about, you know, so news...
Are we complaining too much?
We do. We complain a lot. But we also turn to humour. Yes. You know, every time there's a crisis in our country, it's fascinating to see how South Africans turn. You'll see all these memes come through, and people are laughing and joking and making light of what should be very serious conversation. We've seen that happen time and time again.
Yes, May to June. Let's take a look at that.
So here we see Oscar Pistorius fully back on the charts, almost half of our conversation over that period. Bigger than FIFA Gate. So that just shows you the enormity of the Oscar Pistorius story. And that's not unusual for the Oscar Pistorius story at all. And it was just before this that we started, that Cecil the Lion came through. So it was fascinating to watch how the charts completely changed. There were a couple of lions on this chart. There was a missing lion. I don't know if you remember that story. And a woman was killed at the Lion Park. So that came through. But nothing beat Oscar and FIFA Gate. Another story that South Africans picked up which is not a local story, was the Caitlyn Jenner story.
Yeah, I can see that at the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah.
We picked it up, but to such a small degree. It just shows you that we tend to focus on things that happen here at home. That's where our focus is.
Missing lion, 60.61%.
Yes.
What missing lion was that?
There was a lion that was let loose, or wasn't let loose, a lion that had escaped that people were trying to find, and you just couldn't find the lion for anything. It was actually on the charts for a 2-month period. And they eventually darted the lion, and the lion was safe. I don't know if you remember that story.
Now, in terms of news, will it stay the same in terms of the trends that we see, or more politically orientated, or will it move maybe to more celebrities or entertainment, that sort of thing?
Celebrities do often feature on the chart, like we've seen, but it's often for all the wrong reason. Like the death of Senzo was a very big story as well. And we've seen things like Star Wars. Star Wars makes big news, and big social media news, you know, and there's play on words and that sort of thing. So it really does depend what we're being fed by journalists for a start, and then we choose what we want to latch on to.
A big one happened this week. Steve Harvey, is he still trending?
Steve Harvey is definitely on the chart. People are saying it's the only reason why Miss Universe has any sort of trend on Twitter. So yeah, we saw Steve Harvey definitely coming to the charts over the past couple of days, not for the right reasons either.
Tanya Khoury, thank you so much for coming in and joining us here in studio.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
That was the Managing Director of Roy Africa, Tanya Khoury, who gave us a wrap of the top trending stories for 2015 and what we might see in 2016. Now, last night, Arsenal beat Manchester City 2-1 with Theo Walcott and Oliver Giroud scoring both goals for Arsenal. Now, that is what happened last night, and you can send us your comments on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, and we'll take a look at some of the question that we've asked you this morning in terms of absent fathers and what they can do to make better fathers this Christmas. You can also let us know on at SABC Newsroom, as well as the Facebook page. Let us know there. We'll read some of those comments a little bit later. It doesn't seem like we have them up and running right now, so stay tuned for that. Right now, we go to the weather forecast, and we'll be back right after that. Here's Azi Tawani.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's take a look at your weather details. Starting off with South Africa, we're expecting 30% chance of showers situated towards the eastern parts of South Africa, along the coastal regions to the interior of KwaZulu-Natal, some parts of Mpumalanga and Limpopo, as well as far as the southern parts of Mozambique. Over the northern parts of Mozambique, we're seeing something heavy over Pemba, about 80% chance of thunder showers forecast for today. Over the interior of South Africa, we have a warning of high fire danger over some parts of the Northern Cape, moving into some parts of Northwestern Free State. So please do take note of that for today. Tomorrow, we're seeing 30% chance of showers situated over the northern parts of Namibia and Botswana, and as well over the northeastern parts of Limpopo and some parts of Mpumalanga and along the coastal regions of KwaZulu-Natal. Temperatures are expected to reach a maximum of 39 over Pretoria for today. Gaborone at 42 with partly cloudy skies. Harare sitting at a maximum of 30 degrees. Cape Town at 25 with partly cloudy skies. Over the central interior, we're expecting partly cloudy skies with 30 to 60% chance of showers, but getting to 80 along the coastal regions. Moving towards the interior, reduced to 60% chance of those thunder showers. And tomorrow, we're expecting similar conditions, but mostly 30 to 60% chance of showers over the central interior. Over Luanda, we're seeing about 80% chance of thunder showers over those regions. So please do take note of that if you will be around these areas, with a maximum of 31 degrees for today. Bangui at 37 and 36 over Juba. Addis Ababa sunny with a maximum of 22 degrees. Towards the Middle East, we're seeing clear skies to partly cloudy, 30% chance of showers forecast over Sana'a and moving over to some parts of Port of Sudan. Otherwise, it will be clear with 30% chance of rainfall expected over Cairo. That is all from the weather desk. Ndayandon.
Born with malformation of the limbs, David lives his life to the fullest.
I got this. Let me try my own. Got on the bed, then start playing soccer in the streets, then like, do this.
He can play soccer, he reads and writes, he's even able to swim, a role model to his peers.
Look at the scripture. It doesn't say I'm a conqueror, it says I'm more than a conqueror.
Join your host, Buleng Mulebati, on Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
We kick off this week's show by seeing how Kenyans are paying tribute to the victims, as well as not only how they've coped, but how they returned stronger after the attacks.
Last year, images of the 4-day Westgate Mall attack saturated front pages.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists have assembled to celebrate the peace this war-torn country has not had in a long time.
No conflict that can't be solved without a conversation.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News channel.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Tuesday, the 22nd of December 2015. 3 days, only 3 days before Christmas. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You'll have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now, we're also asking you a very important question today on absent fathers, especially this time of the year, when everybody is on holiday and the festive cheer is there. We are asking you that question, that very important question. How can we, as fathers, make a difference in our children's lives and play a more active role in their lives? That's the question that we pose to you. This morning, you can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter page, the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, also on the Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. The Transport Minister and the RTMC are expected to release the national road death toll later today. And of course, we see there SAA to lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. And the Democratic Alliance MP Diana Kolobana's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. We'll keep you updated on that story. We'll probably cross their life a little bit later. But first, let's find out from Rumo Kakana what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning.
Good morning. Arsenal supporters are having an awesome time after their 2-1 win. And I don't think you are that happy about that win.
No, not really, eh?
Of course, there are other stories you can look forward to from the sports desk. FIFA president contender Tokyo Sekhwali appears before a U.S. grand jury to testify about the alleged $10 million payment that South Africa made to Jack Warner. Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger says it is too soon to talk about his team winning the Premier League title after they beat the title race rivals Manchester City. And Brendan McCullum will retire from international cricket in February after the 2-test series against Australia. We'll have more on this and other stories making headlines in the world of sports later on.
Thank you, Marumo. That's all coming up a little bit later, but now your top story this hour. The Democratic Alliance MP Diana Barnett's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. Barnett is appealing her expulsion from the DA after she was found guilty for bringing the name of the party into disrepute and for contravening its social media policy. This comes after Barnett shared a Facebook post calling for the return of the former apartheid state president, P.W. Botha. The DA federal executive decided to terminate Barnett's party membership more than a month ago. That decision was taken by way of voting through a secret ballot. The DA Legal Federal Commission chairperson, Glenys Breitenbach, says the matter is to be heard and an outcome expected today because the Legal Commission has already been considering the heads of arguments from both KB and the federal executive for some time. She says if either Barnett or the DA FedEx are not satisfied with today's outcome, their last bid would be to take the decision for review at a high court. And as I indicated earlier, we'll probably cross their live as soon as we got that link up and running. South African Airways will lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal that was originally signed off in July. Now, this is according to the National Treasury. That agreement puts a stop to the plans by the airline's chairwoman, Dudu Mnyeni, for a sale and a lease-back arrangement via a third party. Former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene tried to block the deal proposed by Mnyeni, a close associate of President Jacob Zuma. There had been speculation in the media that Nene's clash with Mnyeni was the reason for his removal earlier this month. The new transaction means that cash-strapped SAA will no longer be purchasing 10 planes from Airbus. The decision to hold SAA to the deal was taken by the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan. The Airbus agreement was the first major test for Gordhan. He was reappointed as the Finance Minister last Sunday after a market meltdown, which was triggered by Nene's sacking. Last week, Gordhan promised to stabilize SAA and said that he would call Mnyeni as one of his first orders of business. Transport Minister Dipuo Peters and the Road Traffic Management Corporation will today release the national road death toll in Johannesburg. The RTMC and the Transport Department are meanwhile planning to amend existing laws governing traffic management. Close to 700 road fatalities and 600 crashes have been recorded this December alone. A 24-hour call center is collating the traffic data from all 9 provinces. That information has revealed that most accidents occur between 10 in the evening and 4 in the morning. A combination of drunken driving, overloading, high speed, long-distance driving and unroadworthy vehicles remain major problems. Current legislation serves as no deterrent to road users, and changes are now in the pipeline.
We now need to look at the alternative means, which is the issue of punishment. To that extent, we're working very closely with the Department of Justice, and early next year, we're convening an agent meeting to fast-track the amendment of the legislation, in particular, the reclassification of Schedule 3 to Schedule 5, where people will, when caught driving under the influence of liquor, or recklessly or negligently, they will then be subjected to a 7 days waiting period before they can apply for a bail. But we are also pushing for a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 years should you be convicted of reckless, negligent, inconsiderate, and driving under the influence of liquor. But at the same time, we are also looking at the reviewal of the K53. We need now to make it more difficult for people to access driver's licenses. But when we mean difficult, we need to put it in context. We want to ensure that by the time a person accesses a driver's license, he's competent, he's qualified, he has taken the responsibility to be a driver.
Johannesburg residents have expressed frustration as vehicle licensing and testing stations remain closed in the city. A strike at the licensing offices is in its 3rd week. Workers down tools demanding better pay, among other things.
Closed for business, many motorists turned away. Licensing officers affected include Randburg, Langlaagte, Midrand, Sandton, Roodepoort and Martindale.
It's actually kind of ridiculous. I've been here 3 times in 3 weeks to fetch my license. My temp is about to expire. And I'm worried about getting a fine now, and they still can't do anything. They're not even giving me any answers as to when they're going to be back.
I sold the vehicle, I can't get the papers. The guy that I sold the vehicle to is busy driving the car around. Who knows what can happen?
They must speed up their thing. It's very frustrating, really.
In the meantime, motorists are advised to visit alternative points of issue.
The vehicle license can be renewed at the post office, and the driving license can be taken out at the neighboring testing stations. And a temporary license can also be taken out at any of the neighboring testing stations or licensing office, whether it is Bedford View, Kempton Park, Western area, they'll be able to renew it there.
SAMU members are defying a court interdict to return to work. The union could not be reached for comment. Officials say talks with the Municipal Workers Union SAMU are ongoing, but with no end in sight just yet, Johannesburg motorists will have to go the extra mile to get their vehicle discs and driving licenses renewed. Angwaba Mchunu, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Eskom is set to start cutting bulk electricity supply to towns who owe the power utility millions of rands as from today. Eskom will be cutting power supply to 4 Eastern Cape municipalities, namely Harib, Ikwezi, Nguba and Malatswai. Eskom spokesperson Tosh Mafumbata says that various factors were considered before deciding on a specific course of action and how the cuts will be implemented. Mafumbata says that Eskom in the Eastern Cape will be continuing with the disconnection of the 4 local municipalities that currently owe Eskom over 172 million rand. I tell you, it might be a very, very dark Christmas for the Eastern Cape towns there. Burkina Faso has issued an international arrest warrant for the ousted leader Blaise Compaoré in connection with the murder of the former president Thomas Sankara. Sankara was killed on the 15th of October 1987 during a coup that brought his friend and former comrade-in-arms Compaoré to power. Compaoré himself was driven from power last October by crowds opposing his bid to change the West African country's constitution and extend his 27-year rule.
Burkina Faso's President Thomas Sankara, seen here in file footage, was killed in 1987, the year a coup brought Blaise Compaoré to power. Nearly 30 years on, an international warrant's been issued for Compaoré's arrest in connection with his death. An autopsy on a body believed to be Sankara's earlier this year showed it was riddled with bullets. That's adding weight to suggestions he was executed in the coup all those years ago. At least 10 others have been charged in connection with his death. Compaoré was driven from power in October 2014 in an angry backlash against his attempts to extend his 27-year rule. He fled to neighbouring Ivory Coast, where he's now thought to be based.
Now, 2015 was a tumultuous year. Now, let's take a look back at 2015 in the United States of America. Our U.S. correspondent, Kate Fisher, filed this report.
Will be remembered as the year of confrontation in many communities between police and the citizens they are supposed to protect. We almost lost count of the number of videotaped killings that brought people onto the streets all over the country. There was Eric Garner, the New Yorker, choked to death by officers as they tried to arrest him for black market cigarette sales. Tamir Rice, the 13-year-old, shot to death by an officer in Ohio after brandishing a replica gun in a playground. Freddie Gray in Baltimore, he died after a so-called rough ride in a police van through the city. Laquan McDonald shot to death by officers in Chicago. Lost on no one the fact that all this was taking place during the leadership of America's first African-American president.
If our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. And we don't just pay attention when a young man gets shot.
Another challenge for him, the spiralling epidemic of gun violence. One of the worst incidents in 2015, the June attack on the historic AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, a key landmark in America's civil rights struggle.
Amazing grace,
how sweet the sound.
President Obama led the nation in mourning, a role he took on time and again after mass shootings all over the country, but not the legislative action he demanded to bring about meaningful gun control.
At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries.
After more than 50 years, 2015 saw the reinstating of diplomatic relations between the US and Cuba, with the reopening of embassies in both countries.
A year ago, it might have seemed impossible that the United States would once again be raising our flag over an embassy in Havana. This is what change looks like.
Change in 2015 also looked like this: celebrations on the steps of the Supreme Court after its justices backed marriage equality for all couples, regardless of their sexual orientation. And in 2016, change will come in the form of a new president. The Republican field remains crowded, but a surprise frontrunner's emerged: billionaire Donald Trump, who's courted controversy from the start.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
On the Democratic side, the frontrunner is former Secretary of State and First Lady Hillary Clinton.
I'm running for president. Well, I may not be the youngest candidate in this race, but I will be the youngest woman president in the history of the United States.
Whoever wins in 2016, they're likely to be facing the same foreign policy challenges as the current president. Among them, how best to defeat the extremists of Islamic State. And as 2015 comes to a close, that's something that Barack Obama will be pondering, along with how best to cement his legacy as he enters his final year in office. Kate Fisher, SABC News, Washington.
Meanwhile, Russia began 2015 isolated from the West over Ukraine, which was spiraling from an armed conflict to a full-fledged war. By the end of the year 2015, Russia is at war in Syria and playing a key negotiating role on the international stage.
The year began with international attention focused on the fighting between Ukrainian and rebel forces in the Donbas region. International pressure finally led to a ceasefire. In February, the assassination of the leading opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, who was gunned down while walking within sight of the Kremlin walls, caused outrage at home and abroad.
This horror that goes on in the two interesting parts of East Ukraine can spread to the whole of this country.
In September, Russia moved to prop up the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad and entered the Syrian conflict.
We have this request and we aim to fight against terrorist organizations.
Under the guise of fighting terrorism, Russia spent the first months targeting Bashar al-Assad's enemies, some of whom are backed by the West. Until the Islamic State blew a Russian tourist plane out of the sky over Egypt. Russia vowed to step up its fight against the Islamic State and increase airstrikes. But then Turkish air forces downed a Russian jet, leading to a furious Moscow cutting trade and military cooperations with Ankara and accusing the government of working with the Islamic State and profiting from their oil. Russia begins 2016 with tense relations with both the West and Turkey, while continuing its military involvement in Syria, where the conflict remains as complex as ever.
The year 2015 showed that Russia is prepared to raise the stakes in pursuit of its large geopolitical goals. We are going to see more or less a continuation of this course in the next year.
As the year ends, the Russian economy is under pressure due to falling oil prices and a bad investment climate. But President Putin has over 80% of the population supporting him, and many are prepared for things to get worse before they get better.
Experts predict that the Russian economy is unlikely to recover next year, but the prices of goods are expected to rise, affecting the poorest most. But the question is, will the Russian government be implementing changes to help people face the challenges ahead? Albina Kovalyova, SABC News, Moscow.
Abina Mogonyova there from Russia. Nastarovia. And that's how we end the news break for now. Marumo Kakana will be back with you with your sports news.
Morning Live sets the agenda for the day. We bring you the latest local and international news. We are on the ball with all your sports activities and results. We give you the latest business update.
We bring you the latest weather every time.
Watch Morning Live every weekday morning at 6 o'clock, bringing you everything you need to know before you go. Shap shap, tada.
Africa's tech scene is constantly coming up with innovative ways to answer some of the continent's problems.
We source content from social media, from our mobile apps, from our website.
And as people move from phone calls to data, companies have to switch what they offer.
People expect to get higher speeds, better quality broadband for less.
On Network, we have information on Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Pumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
Welcome back. Let's update your sports news. 2015 has rather been an interesting year. And for more on 2015 major sporting events, we are joined in the studio by presenter, analyst, and independent reporter, Joseph Mutiwa. Mr. Mutiwa, good morning and welcome to Newsroom.
Good morning, Marimo. Thank you for having me in studio today.
It's been rather an interesting year. Let's go far back as the Cricket World Cup. The Proteas didn't do as much as South Africans were hoping they would do. How would you sum it up from a South African perspective?
Obviously, it's always the case where, we as South Africans expect, the Proteas to do well when it comes to these major tournaments. And again, the whole nation was let down by the boys. But again, it's just a few things that we need to do as South Africans. For example, when you look at the batting point of view for us, we really put ourselves under tremendous pressure a whole lot of times. But when you look at, the attacking point of view, which is the bowling part of it, I think the boys really did very well. But I think, again, we will have to wait for another 4 years in order for us to perhaps clinch it that time around.
But would you say those are unfair expectations from South Africans, given the fact that when you look at the batting rankings, I mean, you have Hashim Amla there, you have A.B. de Villiers there. So I guess for some reason, it kind of gives us that hope that, look, the boys are up there and they should be delivering.
Of course. I mean, there's no doubt. You mentioned the likes of Hashim Amla, the likes of de Villiers. These are, tried and tested batsmen when it comes to South African cricket. But then again, you've got to look at other things. When it comes to major tournaments, you look at things such as, the BMT, big match temperament. Does the boys have it? At times, they crack under pressure. Perhaps maybe the weight is too much on their shoulders, and instead of just going onto the pitch and delivering for themselves. So I guess sometimes that's what happens when so much is expected from you.
Now, tell me, is this where the phrase of the chokers come into play, I guess?
But I wouldn't want to call them the chokers, to be honest.
But still on cricket, though, the Proteas later on, they then taught India. They did well with the T20, they did well with the ODI, but failed when it comes to test, and they just didn't fail. They failed dismally.
Yeah, we failed dismally when it came to the test series. But again, I mean, for the Indians, you got to give them credit, because you look at how they played against England previously and also against Sri Lanka. They really, really did well. And hence they took that form into the Proteas game. And it was by no surprise that they won convincingly that series by 3-0.
So now England is in the country. They're also touring South Africa. Given the fact that we all come from, we lost in India, and also I think they lost wherever they were playing before coming here. What are our chances in this case?
Look, this is a rivalry we all know that goes many, many centuries ago. Whenever South Africa is in England or England is in South Africa, you know, the boys will fight, and I'm sure they would want to put one over England on their home soil, so that, you know, they remain right there at the top of the rankings.
One of the up-and-coming brilliant players, Kagiso Rabada, he's been doing ever so well, even in India. Do you think now the boy has what it takes to actually be a permanent part of the Test cricket team?
Look, slowly but surely, you got to give the young boy a chance. I mean, I wouldn't say he's got that huge experience. He's still learning, and there's, you know, some parts of his game that he needs to work on, that he needs to improve on. But again, I would think, you know, as the coach, why not? It's home game, play him. I mean, let's see what he can deliver.
Let's move to the 2015 Rugby World Cup. The Boks, they left the country, and everyone was hoping that the boys will at least make it to the final or even bring it back home. How would you sum up that?
Well, obviously, you look at how we started. Let's talk about the first game against Japan. I mean,
who can forget that?
we obviously, you know, didn't do well in that particular game. But then again, after that, we bounced back. And this is something that I like about the Springboks, having the bounce back ability. We bounced back and only losing, you know, in the semis. But then again, you look at the officiating on the day, and you think to yourself,
are we now going to look at the officiating and the like?
You think to yourself, had it not been for the referee, it needs to be said, had it not been for the referee, you know, we would have gone into the finals, and perhaps, you know, we could have
surely
won.
After putting one over the All Blacks, chances are we're going to make it all the way. But also, they left under a huge cloud the issue of transformation in rugby in South Africa. How much of a psychological edge did that play on the boys?
Obviously, before they left for the World Cup, you know, there was talk about transformation and all of that. But I would imagine that the technical staff within the rugby squad would have told the boys to just relax, forget politics, and just focus on their game. And hence, you know, in that game, that shocker defeat to Japan, perhaps that was still on their minds. But, you know, the second game, they were able to bounce back. And then from then on, we could see that this is the Springboks that we do know. And yes, they definitely wanted to be in the finals, and they wanted to bring this trophy back to South Africa, but it wasn't to be for them.
Speaking of transformation in rugby, now you look at what happened at the Cape Town Sevens in the Blitzbokke. Did ever so well. And now people are coming back and say, look, the Blitzbokke is the most transformed rugby squad in the country. Now look, they are delivering the results. It's not just the issue of putting players of color, but it's putting players who are able to deliver on the day.
We should be able to look beyond color when it comes to sport, and any sport in particular, because what we are about is we are about a nation that is looking forward to, you know, making sure that the nation as it is moves forward. So we look beyond color. If someone is good, irrespective of the color, bring him on, let him play, and let them deliver for the nation.
Let's talk football news. Let's start in Europe. What is happening with Manchester United and Chelsea? Chelsea are the defending champions of BPL, but they're lingering somewhere. We don't even know where in the log exactly.
For Chelsea, look, obviously, I think, to be honest with you, Jose Mourinho lost it in his dressing room. I think that's where the problem started. But not only that, Mourinho, I mean, if you look at how that he didn't beef up his squad, during the closing period. I think that also sort of affected the players. I mean, you look at the likes of Diego Costa, Eden Hazard, the likes of Oscar Fabregas. They played week in and week out in the last season. They won a cup double, which was great for them. But then again, you want to use the same sort of players into the new season. Some teams have refreshed their squads, and you are bringing the same crop of players that were there. And I think it caught up with him, and hence the results were not showing. And a golden handshake with Roman Abramovich.
And the special one became the fired one.
Well, well, behind closed doors, apparently, it was just a golden handshake, and hence, he had to leave.
That's the language we use in sports, golden handshake and the likes. But let's talk about Manchester United. There's talk of Pep Guardiola or even Jose Mourinho joining the team. Do you think Van Gaal hasn't been doing that much of a great job with the Red Devils?
Look, he's been there for about 18 months now. And yes, we understand that when he came in, he had to transform the whole team from start and try to build the team fresh. It hasn't really worked out for him. I don't know, maybe it's because of his philosophy that he wanted to bring in the United players that they haven't caught on as yet. But if you look at some of the games, particularly the recent one against Norwich City, you look at how they approach the game. This is not the United that we used to see back in the days of Sir Alex Ferguson. Something is lacking. I think a bit of confidence, a bit of belief in the players. There's just the technical approach from him really isn't working for the players, and hence the results are not coming their way.
So who do you think then should take the hot seat?
Well,
between the two names that have been thrown in the...
Of course, I mean, if you look at Jose Mourinho, he would be the obvious choice. Because I don't think that he would want to coach any other team in England apart from Man United, considering his relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson. And Sir Alex Ferguson is still there behind the scenes. So I'm sure if Louis van Gaal is sacked, and mind you, he's still in the UK.
I like how confident you are, I'm sure. So we're likely going to see Mourinho in the theatre of dreams.
Correct, chances are.
Let's come back home. Let's talk football, PSL in South Africa. Sundowns, in the recent days, Sundowns has invaded Soweto. They started with Kaizer Chiefs at the TKO. They just wrapped it up now with Pirates over the weekend, 2-0. What do you make of Pitso and where he came from with the boys? Because Sundown supporters at some point were calling for his head, saying Pitso must go.
Interestingly, they were calling for his head. And I mean, it was just about finding combination for Pitso Mosimane and his technical team. At the time, he brought in different players to try and find, a good combination. The likes of Calvert Malajila, Katlego Mashego up front there, We then saw Keegan Dolly coming in and Kama Billiard also bringing his A game currently. And also their striker Castro finding good partnership with Dolly as well as Billiard. So I think for the fans at times, calling for the coach's head very early really doesn't work. Give the coach a chance, let him prove himself, and look, now everybody is happy with him.
I don't know if Kaizer Chiefs supporters will agree with you on giving the coach that much time, because already they are complaining about Steve Kompela. Some are saying they don't believe that Steve is that experienced to actually be coaching a team of Kaizer Chiefs caliber.
I mean, you look at how Steve got the job. I mean, it was a great opportunity for him. And, I mean, if I was Steve, I was going to go for that particular position, irrespective of the pressure. Yes, you understand that Kaizer Chiefs has a winning mentality. They win trophies season in and season out. So when you go there, you have to deliver likewise. Of course, I mean, he's taken the team to the MTN 8 final. They didn't do well against Ajax of Cape Town and recently against the Mamelodi Sundowns. So it's 2 out of 2 that he took the team to the finals but really didn't deliver. Is there a possibility of him maybe in the Nedbank Cup final doing something better? I'm sure there is. So the fans needs to be patient. This is his first season. He's still trying his combinations. He's still trying to instill his philosophy within the Kaizer Chiefs team. And hence, success doesn't happen overnight. You need to be patient.
Now, the other issue that also comes into play when you talk about Kaizer Chiefs is the fact that some of their players are aging now. You look at the middle field play, the players that are playing in the middle field. You have Yeyele Tsolonyane, you have Simpiwe Shabalala, you have Katsande. These are players that are already in their mid-30s. Some are saying, but now it's high time that we start producing and developing players from within the ranks so that they get to be part of the philosophy of the coach when the team goes forward.
That's very true. And I mean, we've got the multi-choice Disky Challenge where youngsters have to be given opportunities, you know, to play there. But then again, you ask yourself, and this is the same question that we've been asking ourselves for many, many years, that why isn't that we are not seeing an 18-year-old player, a 17-year-old player playing regularly for for Team A? I mean, for the likes of Sundowns, Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, you know, all the big clubs in South Africa. But then again, you understand the business part of it. You know, the coaches would want to go with the tried and tested so that their jobs are secured and their lives goes on.
Because now you look at a team such as Ajax Cape Town. Their starting lineup, they're able to have a starting lineup of players that they've developed, and they're doing well in the league. They are part of the top 3.
Of course, I mean, you look at Ajax Cape Town, it's been their philosophy over the years to develop young, fresh talent. And, you know, they've developed so many players, and hence, you know, it's going to continue for Ajax of Cape Town. You look at the likes of Thulani Serero, who's now playing abroad for Ajax Amsterdam. And that's not just him. There's a whole lot of other players also whom Ajax of Cape Town have developed. And that's what we want to see. We want to see youngsters. You look at, you know, the Barclays Premiership. You look at the Spanish La Liga. You look at the youngsters that played for the likes of Real Madrid, the likes of Barcelona, and you ask yourself, why can't we do the same in South African football?
Let's talk about Orlando Pirates. They've done ever so well in their continental duties. But coming back home, domestically, they haven't really found their rhythm yet. What could be a contributing factor to that?
It's always going to be very challenging for you to, you know, play in the domestic front and also play in the CAF Champions League. For them, they wanted to win the CAF Champions League, and hence they gave it their utmost best to be in the finals, and having lost to Etoile there in Tunisia. But then again, coming back home, you know, you look at where they're sitting on the lock. That's not the Orlando Pirates that we know. And I'm sure Eric Tingler and his coaching staff will look at things differently. We saw against Mamelodi Sundowns that defense was really, really poor, leaking those 2 goals. It could have been worse. The goals could have been more for Mamelodi Sundowns. You look at the Orlando Pirates midfield. They've got a tight midfield, the likes of Isasa, Tandani Jumayelo, Masalesa. And you also look up front, Majoro, Gabuza, Erasmus. So you're asking yourself, why aren't they producing the goods? Because they've got the quality players that can do the work for them.
Do you see Eric Tinkler finishing the season with the Buccaneers?
Look, I will give him the opportunity to be there. I will give him the opportunity to finish the season. I think for me personally, he really hasn't done that bad. I mean, for me, he's really done well for Orlando Pirates. It is just that, yes, in the domestic front, you know, they're not doing quite well as everybody else expects from them.
Now, let's talk about other teams in the PSL. Which teams or players have impressed you thus far?
Look, I'll quickly go back to Kama Billiat of Mamelodi Sundowns. I mean, I think right now, he's on his form. I think, for me personally, he's one of the best players currently at the moment. Keegan Dolly is coming slowly but surely of Mamelodi Sundowns as well. The one thing that I like about Keegan Dolly is whenever he's on possession, he's thinking going forward. And it's something that some of the PSL players don't do when you are in possession. They either play sideways, backways, instead of pushing forward, because in football matches it's all about going forward and you know, creating opportunities to score goals, because that's what the fans wants. You see?
Under 23, they've qualified for Rio Olympics after over 10 years of not being taking part in the Olympics. The boys did well. Keegan Dolly was one of the instrumental players in that team. Do you think now at least our football at that level is getting somewhere?
We've got to give SAFA credit. We've got to give the PSL credit for allowing the PSL to sort of close for that 2 weeks period, so that Owen Dagama can take the young boys that he needed to qualify for Rio Olympics next year. And again, it was by no surprise that they really did very well. We could have gone in there had we not lost to Algeria, but then again, a second opportunity against the host, Senegal. We beat them on penalties. We've got to give credit to the boys, the likes of February in the goalkeeping department, Couture in defense. Of course, I mean, there were some concerns in that defense, especially the central defense, the partnership of Couture there. So we need to look at that and beef that. We've got 8 months to go to Rio next year. So we still have time, but we need to really, really work fast to beef up those departments.
When it comes to the under-23 team, we've always had the best. I mean, we have that team that won against the Brazil in the Olympics. But yet again, the problem then comes to when you have to take those players and now promote them to the senior team, then what happens there?
I think it's supposed to be a fluent move. You know, from the under-23s, these are the boys that are supposed to be playing for the national team. But then again, you look at our selection criteria. Sometimes, you know, the coach in the national senior teams is not looking for perhaps maybe the youngsters is looking for people with experience. And hence, again, sometimes we don't see a whole lot of under-23s playing for the national team. But it should be the case. It should be automatic. From the under-21s into the under-23s, these are the boys that are supposed to be promoted to the national team.
Because my thinking is that Prashakes, his assistant coaches, they are coaches from under-23, under-20, and
Yes.
I think that it will be, you know, a smooth transition to the senior team. Hopefully, in the near future, that will get to happen. Thanks a lot, Joseph Mutsiwa.
Thank you so much, Maruma.
Mutsiwa.
It is Mutsiwa.
Thanks a lot. That's your sports at this time. Stay with us. AM News will continue after this.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
It is important for everyone to know food safety practices and make sure that their food is prepared safely from farm to the plate.
Who ensures that there's compliance?
In terms of all the abattoirs, they have to be registered. So when they are being registered, they are actually audited fully to make sure that the structural requirements as well as the hygiene requirements are met.
Most bacteria and viruses cannot withstand the normal cooking temperatures that we use to cook our food.
The bigger retailers cannot be seen as being insensitive to the food safety requirements.
There are many consumers that actually go shopping with a cooler box and ice packs so that they don't break the cold chain, because a few hours outside the temperature that it should be already shortens the shelf life of that product.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Jumbo Africa, it's time for your African headlines. Burundi Parliament has criticized an African Union peacekeeping mission proposal as an invasion of force. The plan proposed by the African Union last week was already rejected by the Burundian lawmakers. Last week, the United Nations Secretary General gave permission for a further 5,000 peacekeepers to be deployed to the nation. The state of Burundi's escalating violence has raised global concerns that the nation may be on the brink of civil war. However, according to reports, Pascal Nyambanda, the chairperson of the National Assembly and the ruling party, whose supporters dominate parliament, said that Burundi is at peace. More than 1 million children have been forced out of schools in northeast Nigeria and neighboring countries due to violence and attacks by Boko Haram. This is according to the latest report by the United Nations Children's Fund. Hundreds of schools in the region have recently reopened, and insecurity and fear of violence are preventing many teachers from resuming classes. This year, Boko Haram have expanded their presence throughout northern Nigeria and neighboring countries. More than 2,000 schools remain closed across Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad and Niger due to the conflict. President Paul Kagame says the people of Rwanda democratically chose to extend his term. Yesterday, Kagame responded to Western criticism of the constitutional amendments. 98% of Rwandans voted for term limits to be lifted for Kagame in order for him to possibly extend his term in office to 2034. Kagame also said that democracy in Rwanda is becoming stronger. Those were your headlines. Now let's take a look at a story making news. Somali Islamist militants yesterday fired at a bus in Mandera, northeastern Kenya, killing at least 2 people. An eyewitness says that at least 10 Al-Shabaab militants boarded the bus and ordered the Muslim passengers to separate from the Christians, but they refused. Just 1 year ago, Al-Shabaab gunmen stormed a Nairobi-bound bus executing 28 non-Muslim passengers. Now those were your headlines. And here in Mali, they have declared a 10-day state of emergency following a series of threats from unnamed jihadist groups. French forces drove Islamist militants out of key northern towns 2 years ago. However, in recent months, their presence has intensified. Last month, extremists attacked a luxury hotel in Bamako, killing 20 people, including many foreigners. One of the biggest news stories of the year was the Fees Must Fall campaign. The country saw a wave of massive uprisings, with students victorious in getting a 0% fee increase for 2016. We now take an in-depth look at this historic campaign. Today, in the first of 4 parts, we look at the genesis of student activism.
(1976), a turning point in the country's history. Thousands of students took to Soweto's dusty streets, resisting a system that forced them to study in Afrikaans. 2 years earlier, a new law had been put in place, the Afrikaans Medium Decree of 1974, forcing all black students to use Afrikaans as the main medium of instruction.
We then became aware that this is a language that we are not very conversant with. And on our side also, it's a language that's not international. So we felt that we cannot now be taught in Afrikaans all subjects. So we didn't want it. And because our parents were sort of cowed down since the 60s, they were afraid. We were aware that we can't really rely on our parents to solve this problem for us. So we decided that it's important to protest against this because it's going to affect us and affect our future.
On the morning of the 16th of June, students walked towards the Orlando Stadium. They were met with fierce police brutality. Their courage and fearless determination was unparalleled.
In our minds, what was going on, it was we needed this mental or psychological liberation. We knew that you cannot get your physical liberation without being liberated mentally. And that kind of consciousness in itself contributed to the courage that we actually took us to the street at that era.
Well, courage, I guess, it always comes naturally because we don't have much responsibility as a student. You don't have a family to think of. You don't think of, my daughter, my son. So you are almost alone. So when you think that this is not right, you want to challenge it right away.
More than 170 students were killed by police, with more than 700 injured. One of the first victims, 13-year-old Hector Peterson.
Where he was shot, it was about 200 meters away from where we were, where he was shot, and because they were shooting now, and then it was all riots. So we We then heard that they've killed Hector, they've shot a young boy, and that's when the student became more rough.
It was that day when students spoke in one voice. And they were not only speaking in one voice on that day. There was a lot of planning, that took place, led by the South African student movement of those days. And this was just a culmination of a lot of student planning resulting into that kind of insurrection.
The Soweto riots spread to other townships countrywide. Unprecedented anger among young black South Africans. It signaled the beginning of the end for the racist apartheid government and gave fresh impetus to exiled liberation movements. The class of 76 changed the course of history. Almost 4 decades later, a new generation of student activists. But this time, it's not about inferior education, but access to affordable education. Anger about financial exclusion started simmering on campuses in 2010. A government funding scheme for disadvantaged higher education students proved inadequate. NSFAS was fraught with inconsistencies from the outset. As universities' enrollments burgeoned, demand outstripped funding from state coffers. Currently, only students with a family income of less than 13,000 Rand a month are eligible for the loan. But parents earning more than that can't necessarily afford university fees. Rising living costs exclude many students from middle-income households. Boosting the fund radically over the years didn't appease students. Thousands of deserving candidates are turned away annually. This discontent with NSFAS set the tone for the Fees Must Fall campaign.
When Mandela said, never, never, never again, I believed him that I will never see 1976 again. It brought tears, particularly the scenes in Cape Town in Parliament. That to me was like, here's history repeating itself.
The precursor to this unprecedented chapter in post-94 history was the Roads Must Fall campaign. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.
Hashtag Fees Must Fall. That was one of the biggest stories for this year. And it might continue when we open in 2016. So keep your eyes peeled right here on your favorite channel, Newsroom, on channel 404, SABC News. But right now, it's time to take a look at your weather. Azi Tuwani. Well, that was not Azi Tuwani, but that was your continental weather forecast. We will be back a little bit later with more. But Newsroom will be back at the top of the hour. Stay tuned.
It's a favorite minister here. Yane, party is a very nice language because it was written by you, the people. Here's a good one. Try hard, an individual who tries against all odds. Hoy! Give me water!
Fryhards, keep cool with the case of Costa Light for $179.99 and help make party South Africa's 12th official language. Tops at Spa. Shake things up.
It is important for everyone to know food safety practices and make sure that their food is prepared safely from farm to the plate.
Who makes sure, who ensures that there's compliance?
In terms of all the abattoirs, they have to be registered. So when they are being registered, they are actually audited fully to make sure that the structural requirements as well as the hygiene requirements are met.
Most bacteria and viruses cannot withstand the normal cooking temperatures that we use to cook our food.
The bigger retailers cannot be seen as being insensitive to the food safety requirements.
There are many consumers that actually go shopping with a cooler box and ice packs so that they don't break the cold chain, because a few hours outside the temperature that it should be already shortens the shelf life of that product.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
Recent jazz sounds are now an eclectic mix of all types of genres. Young South Africans have adapted the sounds to their own experiences. We caught up with a very talented young jazz musician who's giving the world her interpretation of jazz.
What made you go and venture out into jazz?
Yeah, I grew up with music then. I grew up with gospel music, I'd say. So venturing into jazz, it was something that I wanted to try out, something different from what I knew when I grew up. So I thought, well, jazz is kind of close to gospel. Maybe I would relate, but let's see. I couldn't go really near opera because I wanted to go with something that I really feel. You know what I mean? So I thought, let me study jazz further, because obviously you can't even study gospel, right? Unless it's popular music.
With the evolving trends in styles of delivery, we were interested in finding out what sets her apart.
It's languages, because I did, in my album there's like 5-6 languages. I have Swahili, Shona, Zulu, Xhosa, and Sesotho, and English.
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, world-wise, it's actually with languages with me, and with sound, it's acoustic, which is, yeah, it could be world, I guess, but I tried to really to come up with something that is fresh and different from any other. Especially in South Africa, vocal.
The great thing about this new generation, and I don't think anybody should be worried about the young generation of jazz in South Africa, because you see the quality of the music is being written by South African musicians. We just don't go and say, okay, I'm going to play some standards, etc. No, I'm going to be playing my own music, and I'm going to really showcase that very special thing. I think jazz has got a natural grounding and is very much anchored in South African society. Everybody misses those vibey days, and so having jazz clubs in South Africa is something that should be natural, and there was a time when there were lots of them, and then these days there's a bit fewer of them, so we're very happy to come and fill that space.
Jazz is still making huge waves.
Morning Live sets the agenda for the day.
We bring you the latest local and international news.
We are on the ball with all your sports activities and results.
We give you the latest business update.
We bring you the latest weather every time.
Watch Morning Live every weekday morning at 6 o'clock, bringing you everything you need to know before you go. Sharp, sharp, 8 tada.
Are you saying the king must go to jail? You are not royal blood, therefore you are going to serve time on behalf of the king. Where does the public protector stand on this matter? Are you with the marches, for the marches, against the march? If this is your ancestor, it is very much his ancestor as well, because this is the cradle of humankind. Is there God somewhere in your science? Drinking the blood of a person with albinism gives extra magical powers. A man of the cloth is involved here because it would mean that somehow religion is being brought into this part of the myth. What do you say to it?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
The public protector Tilima Donsela had a tough time motivating for a baseline increase of 200 million for her office budget.
We need to have a feel and idea of what types of cases are handling.
Have we addressed the structural deficiencies that led to procurement irregularities? The answer is yes.
For now, we are in a difficult situation. We are applying austerity measures.
Don't betray your trust to the people of South Africa because you have personal issues with them.
We need to protect the public protector, and unashamedly doing so because she represents the hope of the people of South Africa.
I am leaving this office next year. Treat this office as a constitutional body.
A View from the House, weekdays, 2:30 p.m. CAT on SABC News.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Tuesday, the 22nd of December 2015. 3 days to go before Christmas. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Stay with us as we broadcast live from all of the Park Studios, Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. As you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The Transport Minister and the Road Traffic Management Corporation are expected to release the national road death toll later today. SAA to lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. And the Democratic Alliance MP Diana Kolobana's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. Those are all your news headlines, but first let's find out from Marumo Kekana what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. What's coming up in the sports segment later on, of course, we'll give you an update. As you would know now that the Gunners of London are the men.
They're shooting.
They're shooting. Let's now take a look at stories making headlines in the world of sports. FIFA presidential contender Tokyo Sekhwale appears before a U.S. grand jury to testify about an alleged $10 million payment South Africa made to Jack Warner. Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger says it is too soon to talk about his team winning the Premier League title after they beat the title race rivals Manchester City. And Brendan McCullum will retire from international cricket in February of 2016 after the two-test series against the Aussies. We'll have more on this and other stories in the next couple of minutes, rather later on in this hour.
Thank you, Maruma. That's all coming up later, but right now let's take a look at your top story this hour. The Democratic Alliance MP Diana Barnett's fate will be decided by the party's Federal Legal Commission in Johannesburg today. Barnett is appealing her expulsion from the DA after she was found guilty for bringing the name of the party into disrepute and contravening its social media policy. This comes after Barnett shared a Facebook post calling for the return of the former apartheid state president P.W. Botha. The DA federal executive decided to terminate Barnett's party membership more than a month ago. That decision was taken by way of voting through a secret ballot. DA Legal Federal Commission chairperson Glynis Breitenbach says the matter is to be heard and an outcome expected today because the Legal Commission has already been considering the heads of arguments from both Barnett and the federal executive for some time. She says if either Barnett or the DA FedEx are not satisfied with today's outcome, their last bid would be to take the decision for a review at a high court. Now, earlier I spoke to our reporter at the hearing, Aldrin Sampear, and this is what he said about the hearing.
Today is pretty important to Diana Barnett because it is the Legal Commission that will ultimately decide her fate, whether her appeal, whether she loses her appeal or whether she's successful in an appeal. Because remember that after that controversial Facebook post that she reposted on Facebook, where it indicated and calling on P.W. Botha to return and saying that the state was run far much better than under the current administration. That post obviously landed her in hot water, and ultimately the federal executive then decided to terminate her membership as well as her membership as Member of Parliament. While she did indicate that, of course, that she will be appealing that, and today is the day that she appeals that, and we haven't been privy to the heads of arguments that have been filed by both the Federal Executive Council, which believes that they've taken the right decision in expelling her and terminating her membership, as well as Diana Barnett. But what we've seen in some media, or some reports rather, is that some commentators have said that the decision by the federal executive was pretty harsh on Diana Barnett. But what this then does, it means that whoever makes whatever controversial comment, whether it be on Facebook or on Twitter, as the DA social media policy state, could end up in the same place where Diana Barnett finds herself today.
How important and significant will today's findings be for the Democratic Alliance as an opposition party and for Diana Barnett?
Well, it's pretty significant looking into the municipal elections, going into the municipal elections next year. And of course, you know that the DA has been going through a rebranding and trying to look as try to look as a party that could be appealing to black voters as well, and trying to entice more black voters to vote for the DA. That is something that the DA has been battling with for a couple of years, and now you have Mmusi Maimane at the helm of the DA. Some have said that having Mmusi Maimane there at the helm of the DA would mean that the DA is definitely changing its branding.
Posted on the latest on that story throughout the program, so stay tuned here on Channel 404. South African Airways will lease 5 Airbus jets under a deal originally signed off in July. Now that's according to the National Treasury. That agreement puts a stop to the plans by the airline's chairwoman Dudu Mnyeni for a sale and leaseback arrangement via a third party. Former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene tried to block the deal proposed by Mnyeni, a close associate of the President, Jacob Zuma. There had been speculation in the media that Nene's clash with Mnyeni was the reason for his removal earlier this month. The new transaction means that the cash-strapped SAA will no longer be purchasing 10 planes from Airbus. The decision to hold SAA to the deal was taken by the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan. The Airbus agreement was the first major test for Gordhan. He was reappointed as the Finance Minister last Sunday. after a market meltdown which was triggered by Nene's sacking. Last week, Gordhan promised to stabilize SA and said that he would call Moyeni as one of his first orders of business. Transport Minister Dipuo Peters and the Road Traffic Management Corporation, the RTMC, will today release the national road death toll in Johannesburg. The RTMC and the Transport Department are meanwhile planning to amend existing laws governing traffic management. Close to 700 road fatalities and 600 crashes have been recorded this December alone. A 24-hour call centre is collating the traffic data from all 9 provinces. The information has revealed that most accidents occur between 10 in the evening and 4 in the morning. The combination of drunken driving, overloading, high-speed, long-distance driving and unroadworthy vehicles remain major problems. Current legislation serves as no deterrent to road users. Changes are now in the pipeline. Well, it seems like Eskom has cut electricity to 4 Eastern Cape towns. They include Steynsburg, Janssenville, Bedford, Adelaide and Allowil North. This follows debt of 172 million rand owed to Eskom. The power utility says it will disconnect electricity in 3 stages during the day. The municipalities of Harip, Meletswai, Ekwezi and Nguba faces electricity cuts from 6 to 9 o'clock in the morning, 12 to 2 in the afternoon, and 5 to 9 o'clock in the evening until the issue is resolved. Negotiations between Eskom and the concerned residents of Janssenville are continuing today. Further afield on the continent, Burkina Faso has issued an international arrest warrant for the ousted leader Blaise Compaoré in connection with the murder of the former president Thomas Sankara. Sankara was killed on the 15th of October 1987 during a coup that brought his friend and the former comrade-in-arms Compaoré to power. Compaoré himself was driven from power last October by crowds opposing his bid to change the West African country's constitution and to extend his 27-year rule.
Burkina Faso's President Thomas Sankara, seen here in file footage, was killed in 1987. The year a coup brought Blaise Compaoré to power. Nearly 30 years on, an international warrant's been issued for Compaoré's arrest in connection with his death. An autopsy on a body believed to be Sankara's earlier this year showed it was riddled with bullets. That's adding weight to suggestions he was executed in the coup all those years ago. At least 10 others have been charged in connection with his death. Compaoré was driven from power in October 2014 in an angry backlash against his attempts to extend his 27-year rule. He fled to neighbouring Ivory Coast, where he's now thought to be based.
Now, for a look back at 2015 in the United States of America, our U.S. correspondent Kate Fisher filed this report.
2015 in the United States will be remembered as the year of confrontation in many communities between police and the citizens they are supposed to protect. We almost lost count of the number of videotaped killings that brought people onto the streets all over the country. There was Eric Garner, the New Yorker, choked to death by officers as they tried to arrest him for black market cigarette sales. Tamir Rice, the 13-year-old, shot to death by an officer in Ohio after brandishing a replica gun in a playground. Freddie Gray in Baltimore, he died after a so-called rough ride in a police van through the city. Laquan McDonald shot to death by officers in Chicago. Lost on no one the fact that all this was taking place during the leadership of America's first African-American president.
If our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. And we don't just pay attention when a young man gets shot.
Another challenge for him, the spiralling epidemic of gun violence. One of the worst incidents in 2015, the June attack on the historic AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, a key landmark in America's civil rights struggle.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
President Obama led the nation in mourning, a role he took on time and again after mass shootings all over the country, but not the legislative action he demanded to bring about meaningful gun control.
At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries.
After more than 50 years, 2015 saw the reinstating of diplomatic relations between the US and Cuba, with the reopening of embassies in both countries.
A year ago, it might have seemed impossible that the United States would once again be raising our flag over an embassy in Havana. This is what change looks like.
Change in 2015 also looked like this: celebrations on the steps of the Supreme Court after its justices backed marriage equality for all couples, regardless of their sexual orientation. And in 2016, change will come in the form of a new president. The Republican field remains crowded, but a surprise frontrunner's emerged: billionaire Donald Trump, who's courted controversy from the start.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
On the Democratic side, the frontrunner is former Secretary of State and First Lady Hillary Clinton.
I'm running for president. Well, I may not be the youngest candidate in this race, but I will be the youngest woman president in the history of the United States.
Whoever wins in 2016, they're likely to be facing the same foreign policy challenges as the current president. Among them, how best to defeat the extremists of Islamic State. And as 2015 comes to a close, that's something that Barack Obama will be pondering, along with how best to cement his legacy as he enters his final year in office. Kate Fisher, SABC News, Washington.
From one country that is massive in the world to Russia, which meanwhile began 2015 isolated from the West over Ukraine, which was spiraling from an armed conflict to a full-fledged war. By the end of the year, Russia is at war in Syria, and they're playing a key negotiating role on the international stage.
The year began with international attention focused on the fighting between Ukrainian and rebel forces in the Donbas region. International pressure finally led to a ceasefire. In February, the assassination of the leading opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, who was gunned down while walking within sight of the Kremlin walls, caused outrage at home and abroad.
This horror that goes on in the two interesting parts of East Ukraine can spread to the whole of this country.
In September, Russia moved to prop up the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad and entered the Syrian conflict.
We have this request and we aim to fight against terrorist organizations.
Under the guise of fighting terrorism, Russia spent the first months targeting Bashar al-Assad's enemies, some of whom are backed by the West. Until the Islamic State blew a Russian tourist plane out of the sky over Egypt. Russia vowed to step up its fight against the Islamic State and increase airstrikes. But then Turkish air forces downed a Russian jet, leading to a furious Moscow cutting trade and military cooperations with Ankara and accusing the government of working with the Islamic State and profiting from their oil. Russia begins 2016 with tense relations with both the West and Turkey, while continuing its military involvement in Syria, where the conflict remains as complex as ever.
The year 2015 showed that Russia is prepared to raise the stakes in pursuit of its large geopolitical goals. We are going to see more or less a continuation of this course in the next year.
As the year ends, the Russian economy is under pressure due to falling oil prices and a bad investment climate. But President Putin has over 80% of the population supporting him, and many are prepared for things to get worse before they get better.
Experts predict that the Russian economy is unlikely to recover next year, but the prices of goods are expected to rise, affecting the poorest most. But the question is, will the Russian government be implementing changes to help people face the challenges ahead? Albina Kovalyova, SABC News, Moscow.
And on that international note, let's take a break and we'll be right back after that.
Morning Live sets the agenda for the day.
We bring you the latest local and international news.
We are on the ball with all your sports activities and results.
We give you the latest business update.
We bring you the latest weather every time.
Watch Morning Live every weekday morning at 6 o'clock, bringing you everything you need to know before you go. Sharp, sharp, 8 tada.
Born with malformation of the limbs, David lives his life to the fullest.
I got this. Let me try on my own. Got on the bed, then start playing soccer in the streets, then like, do this.
He can play soccer, he reads and writes, he is even able to swim, a role model to his peers.
Look at the scripture. It doesn't say I'm a conqueror, it says I'm more than a conqueror.
Join your host Buleng Mulebati on Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Welcome back. The drought in the Free State, the Northwest and the Northern Cape has reached critical stage. No rainfall has been forecast for the rest of the year, and water supplies in Bloemfontein and other towns are under increasing pressure.
Sun-scorched and barren, this land meant for maize planting in the Central and Western Free State. Some relief this weekend. Bloemfontein had 5 millimeters of rain, Welkom 19 and Bothaville 12. But insufficient for grain farmers to prepare the land.
We have basically finished the planting in the east. The rain is very patchy. Heat is tremendous. That is not good for the crop in the west, which produced the most of our white maize and the heart of our production in the Free State and Northwest. I don't think that the farmers have planted 20% of the hectares they intended, and I think this is going to leave South Africa with a big shortage.
Appeal to residents.
Festive, but we also want to warn our people that to still use water sparingly. Because of the temperatures that are very high, the consumption has gone up.
A summer of discontent. Farmers faced a bleak festive season.
Now, for more on the story, in our Bloemfontein studios, we're joined by Kundile Kadama, spokesperson for the Mangaung Metro. Kundile, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning, Alvin, and to the viewers.
Now, it seems that the water shortage in Mangaung will not go away anytime soon. Can you give us an update and a picture of how dire or critical the situation is in your province?
Alvin, I think this is a national phenomenon, because if you can look at most of the cities, this is the problem that they are going through. And if you look at Mangaung Metro, we are not different from other cities. I do not want to overemphasize this, but safe to say that you can see that the effects of global warming are actually upon us, and this can be seen through your abnormal weather temperatures. And one of the things that we are actually going through, it is the consumption rate. If you look at during this time, the consumption rate is high. People are at home, they are using more water. If you look at your business, including your malls and so, there's a high consumption in terms of households. So that is why we actually came up with a mitigating strategies, amongst others. It is making sure that we are doing exactly what we are doing now, the public awareness. But the city has been fortunate because we have seen this coming way before, because mid this year, around June, July, we imposed water restrictions, and most of the, particularly, your household and so, and general citizens in Mangaung have been responsive, and we appreciated that. One of the things that we also did, it is just to make sure that we up our game in terms of communication strategy, so that we send out proper messages, but also we enhance our public education, because that's what is critical at this stage. If there are no rains, what do? You just try to save what you have at your disposal so that at least it can sustain the people, because the water period did anticipate that the only time that we will be getting proper rains is around March in 2016. Now that on its own tells you that there is a serious challenge with regards to the water reserves that we have, and we need to just make sure that we cut our cloth according to the size of our body.
Which part of the province has been severely affected and are experiencing critical water shortages as a result of the drought?
Look, not so long, the Premier of the province, Dr. Ismail Khashoggi, did pronounce that we are a drought-stricken province. And this has affected quite a number of places without necessarily individualizing them. So I've seen the MEC of Agriculture making some interventions in other areas by providing them with water tankers, by making sure that he engages the farmers throughout the province. So you can see the intensity of the drought that we're actually experiencing. And of course, I'm saying it is not an isolated case, but we have to make sure that all the messages that go out are very clear. And our people, one of the things, Elvin, that has been problematic in my space, particularly in Mangaung Metro, is that we have been getting hoax messages that goes to the citizens that in the next 10 days there won't be water in the next. And those hoax messages have to be contained, because they certainly bring a panic into citizens, particularly of Mangaung, because they are unfounded. They are not necessarily having the authority. So we want to urge the citizens of Mangaung, and maybe the province at large, that they must wait for the authority or the official statement from either the provincial government or the city itself, so that there is no confusion. But at the moment, we want to warn those people that they must stop it, they must stop abusing the social media, they must stop abusing the text messages, so that people do not panic during this time.
Now, from a municipality's perspective, what do you think should be done in order to make sure that the situation does not get any worse, especially for the residents and the tourists coming through your province?
Look, I'm from our zoo in a few minutes from now, and I've seen that they are doing well with regards to the borehole, and the animals at the zoo are being taken care of. I know that there are issues that would trickle down, like the issue of the availability of lucerne, because if the drought persists, then it means even if we have come up with strategies of making sure that our animals do have water and so, but the issue of lucerne would be an issue. So we need to, as I indicated earlier, to cut the cloth according to the size of the body, making sure that at least by the time we get rainfalls, there have been no severe pain inflicted to both both humankind and animals. But one thing that we have also done, Alvin, is that we're making sure that we are intensifying our communication. We are not so long. We have just spoken to the Minister Nomvula, that we have gone to an extent that of making sure that we are coming up with theatrical dramas in the schools, just to make sure that we start grooming these kids and sending out messages whilst they are young. And I think this is what was happening even our early age. You remember that you'd be given simple tips that when you come out of the toilet, rinse your hands, close the tap, So those are the messages that we're trying to check as to how creatively can we start teaching even the kids in primary and secondary, but also sending out this message to all the. But one of the things that was impressive is that the executive mayor has started engaging his councillors, Councillor Thabo Manyoni, to say how do we best engage communities as councillors to make sure that we teach them, but also we update them on the status of water within the city, because that on its own will be able to alleviate the panic that most of the people within the country are actually having.
Mr. Gondile Gadana, thank you so much for your time, and I hope all the best for you and the Free Staters there.
Thanks, Alvin, and to the viewers.
That was Gondile Gadana, Mangaung Metro spokesperson. He's rechristened me to Alvin instead of Elvis, but let's hope that they do get some rainfall in the Free State. Now let's move over to the Northern Cape Tourism Department, who is on a mission to attract tourists passing through the province to their various different holiday destinations. Most pass through the province from Johannesburg to Cape Town. The province has now organized different activities to get tourists to stay a while before continuing with their journey. Now, for more on the province's tourism adventures, we are now joined live from our Kimberley studios by Diana Martin. Now, she is the General Manager of Marketing Promotions at the Northern Cape Tourism Authority. Diana, a very good morning to you and welcome.
And thank you and good morning to you, Alvin.
It's Elvis, Diana. I've just rectified Mr. Kodama there. But if you think about rock and roll, you think about me. But can you tell us about the types of activities that are planned to encourage the tourists to stay there in your beautiful city in Kimberley for a while instead of just passing through?
Well, yes, that is always a problem that we had, people just merely rushing through to get to their holidays. And for the last 3 years, we have promoting the Northern Cape as taking your holiday actually start when you leave your home and then take a slow drive through the Northern Cape and then stop at the small towns and enjoy what we have on offer. And we're very happy to announce that, yes, over the past 3 years, we have seen actually this indeed happening. People are traveling from early morning from Johannesburg or further afield, and then they reach Kimberley sort of midday, spend the morning going to the big hall, of course, which is the biggest attraction in the mining town, and then also visit some of our galleries, which are some of the important galleries in South Africa, and then continue either staying over and enjoying also some evening activities like the ghost tour, but then also they continue to Britstown and Victoria West and overnighting there and enjoying a slow drive with the Padstalle next door and various activities where they can stop and cool down and still do some shopping, those last-minute shopping.
Is this campaign of yours working, and have you seen an increase in the number of tourists that's staying over instead of just passing through Kimberley?
Yes, we are at the big hall at the Tourism Information Flagship and engaging with the clients and asking. So from we see about 100 odd people coming through every day, and not all of them actually stop with us. But from those, pretty much about 60% are staying over. If not in Kimberley, then en route towards their final destination. And we also see more and more people actually staying within the Northern Cape for their holidays. We have had some clients that's been staying and guests that's been staying for 4 days or longer in Kimberley and surrounding area before traveling onwards either to Cape Town or to Johannesburg. But also we have seen our coastal towns, holiday destinations such as Alexander Bay, Port Nolloth, McDougall Bay, and all along the coastal areas between the West Coast and Namibia, increasingly becoming the destination, the end destination for tourists from Johannesburg and surrounding areas.
Now, how do you ensure that the tourists do get your message and that you get your message across to them? How do you reach out to them? What sort of vehicles are you using to get the message to them that Kimberley is a place to be?
Yes, not only Kimberley, but the entire Northern Cape. We start our campaign and we launch it normally in Johannesburg at the holiday destination show Getaway. And then from there on, from our social media campaigns, online media, and especially thank you to you as well. So it is a combined platform on all media platforms that we are getting the message out. And then also this year, we have increased tourism information offices open open along all the main arteries, where teams are there to talk with clients and guests and hand out our leaflets and promotions. And we also have a specifically designed booklet, Experience Northern Cape, where people can see exactly what to do and see the varied experiences that is along the route that they can stop and enjoy with the entire family and not just rush along to the destination. And it also does help that the Northern Cape has a really good road system, and it is not as busy as the main arteries out of the Gauteng area especially. So for those that want to travel a little bit slower and a little bit more quieter road, the Northern Cape is definitely the region to travel through. And as I say, with our information teams all along in Uppington, Springbok, along the R63 and Carnarvon, there are a lot of tourism information points where people can pick up the booklet or the map and see what is there to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wish we had some of the pictures available to show the people what they can see, and you've gone through some of the attractions that's available in the Northern Cape, but just some of the most important ones that people should not miss in the Northern Cape.
And as I've mentioned already, in Kimberley, the mining town, the museums, and the big hall. In Uppington, of course, the Ograbi's waterfall. The Ograbi's waterfall, incidentally, is the 6th largest waterfall in the world. So it's a very, not only beautiful to see, but also important to see. And then also, of course, the Northern Cape is also getting well known for the wine manufacturing and distilling. Maybe not such a well-known fact, but the Northern Cape produced the largest amount of grape juice in Southern Africa. So great wine cellars to try and stop by along the Uppington Road between Uppington, Kakamas and Kemus. And then, of course, in Springbok, one can go and visit some of the wonderful botanical gardens, of course, the sea and the wrecks along the west coast. And then, of course, wonderful seafood, some of South Africa's nicest milkshakes to be had at Williston, at the Williston Mall between Calvinia and Carnarvon. At Carnarvon, the SKA, which, of course, is a very important astral development for Southern Africa. And at Sutherland, one can also go and visit SALT if you are interested in sky watching and stargazing. That is also quite an experience to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. How long will this campaign be running, Diana? And do you think that you will maintain it for 365 days a year?
Well, we have several campaigns that we run throughout the year. So the summer campaign is to promote the destination as a summer holiday vacation. It's normally run for 3 months from beginning September until the end of December. And then we also have Visit Easter, where Easter we see a number of families also coming home to visit their family during the Easter period. And it's also a very important period for motor enthusiasts because we have spinning and drifting for the entire 4 days. So that's quite an exciting event. And then, of course, the Makwa flowers. We run the spring campaign and promoting the spring flowers and the Namakwa land and area to come and visit. So we run basically 3 major campaigns throughout the year to promote the Northern Cape as a desirable holiday destination.
I can see some of the pictures we're getting now through, and some of the pictures there from the Big Hole and some of the other cities in the Northern Cape. And Diana, anything that you have special for tourists this December holidays?
Yes, anybody that travels through the Northern Cape are welcome to load the experiences and a special picture at our hashtag Summer Northern Cape, and they stand to win a really great prize for a family of 4 for a 4-day experience of the Northern Cape in a region of their choice. But anywhere where they go, they will find warm hospitality of the Northern Cape and definitely family-friendly activities to rediscover their time with their family and what is really meaningful to them in this period.
Diana Martin, thank you so much for your time. The General Manager, Marketing Promotions at the Northern Cape Tourism Authority. Let's hope you have a festive season out there.
Thank you, Elvis, and to you as well.
That's Diana Martin there from Kimberley, and you need to check out the Northern Cape, a wonderful province to be in. Right now, we're going to take a break in Marumo Kakana. We'll be back with your sports news after the break.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Welcome back. Let's give you a concluding sports bulletin. FIFA presidential contender Tokyo Sexwale has reportedly appeared before the U.S. grand jury to testify about an alleged $10 million payment South Africa made to Jack Warner. Sexwale was a member of the bid board that successfully campaigned for his home country to host the 2010 World Cup. Warner, a former vice president of Global Soccer's governing body, is accused of receiving payments from the South African Football Africa via a FIFA account disguised as a football development cash in order to secure votes for South Africa's bid. Sexwale's spokesperson has reportedly confirmed that the former government minister appeared before the jury. Meanwhile, Sexwale says the news that former FIFA president Sepp Blatter and head of European soccer Michel Platini were banned by FIFA for 8 years for his ethics violation is not something to celebrate. The ethics committee's decision comes after an investigation into controversial R30 million payment that FIFA made to Platini in 2011.
Football is heartbroken, and it's not a day for celebration. Really, it's a day because these are two. One is president, one is vice president. If it was a country or if it was a company, it's almost a crisis. So we cannot wait for February to take place so that we salvage and we win back the trust and confidence of people worldwide about what FIFA should be. It is precisely the thing of leadership. It is precisely the thing around democracy. Openness, it's all those things. Once you open that, then you'll have less problems. That is why good people, credible people, with not just track record of football. Football has got millions of us, but track record of leadership and administration, of making sure that we are able to hold things, financial management and control. That is what we are looking for.
And staying with that story, former English Football Association chairperson David Bernstein has described FIFA president Sepp Blatter as a fighter, a performer, and a master of confusion. Yesterday, FIFA's ethics committee suspended both Blatter and UEFA boss Michel Platini for 8 years for ethics violation. This follows an investigation into a controversial multi-million payment from FIFA authorized by Blatter to Platini 4 years ago.
Addressing journalists shortly after the committee's announcement, Blatter claimed he was being treated as a punching ball, maintained that the payment to Platini was above board, and vowed to prove his innocence.
Suspended 8 years, but I will fight.
Bernstein, who headed the FA for 2 years, described the FIFA president's news conference as typical Blatter.
He came out fighting, tried to confuse the issue, threw in some names that no one can argue with, like Nelson Mandela. But as I think, he's a mixture of being a real cynic, which I think he is, and maybe he's in denial.
Bernstein added that Blatter has a long road ahead of him. He still has to face the Swiss and US authorities, but doubted that Blatter would leave with dignity.
He will appeal any way he can. He'll appeal with FIFA, then he'll go to CAS, the Court of Arbitration in Sport, and I think he will fight this all the way. He hasn't got to where he is and lasted like he has without being a very tough guy. So he will fight, but he will not win.
Bernstein, however, had more sympathy with Platini and warned that one should distinguish greatly between the two.
Blatter has presided over a corrupt organisation, there's no question about that. But Platini's record is very different. He's a fine man of football. He was in a very strong position until recently. UEFA are a very clean organisation, as far as I know. So he's got caught out.
UEFA, meanwhile, said it was disappointed with the ruling and supported Platini's right to try and clear his name. Until his suspension, Platini had been the frontrunner to succeed Blatter at the top of world soccer in February. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
And now let's shift our attention to the English Premiership. Arsenal beat Manchester City by 2-1 at home with first half goals from Theo Walcott and Olivier Giroud. The visitors got a consolation goal with 8 minutes remaining with a beautiful strike by Yaya Toure. Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger said it was too soon to talk about his team winning the Premier League title after they saw past one of their main rivals for the crown, Manchester City. Let's now take a look at the highlights from the game.
Ozil. Theo Walcott, beauty! A quite gorgeous goal from Theo Walcott. Goes up ahead of him. It's Mesut Ozil. It is Olivier Giroud. It's 2-0 Arsenal. Right on half-time. The gunners are firing. Now Ozil. Campbell, Ramsey, heart got big, backing by Walcott against Sanya and behind. Sanya, Toure, oh that is a gorgeous goal. What a deft finish from Yaya Toure.
Brendan McCullum, who led New Zealand through an exhilarating 2 years of success, will retire from international cricket in February after the 2-test series against Australia. McCullum told a news conference in Christchurch that the second test against Australia, which starts at Hagley Oval on February 20th, his 101 test would be his last. The explosive batsman, who has scored 6,273 runs in 99 tests at an average of 38.48, took charge of New Zealand in all 3 formats of the game at the start of 2013 after Ross Taylor was controversially dropped as the skipper by coach Mike Hassan. McCullum led New Zealand unbeaten through 7 test series until the recent reverse in Australia and to a first 50 overs World Cup final last year, where they were again beaten by their trans-Tasman sea rivals Australia. New Zealand's top batsman, 25-year-old Kane Williamson, is likely to take over as a Black Caps captain in all formats. The South African under-19 cricket team that will be defending their ICC under-19 World Cup title in Bangladesh have been selected at the conclusion of the Kaya Majola under-19 cricket week in Port Elizabeth. The bulk of the team has already done international duty in their junior ranks. The team will face Bangladesh in the opening match on the 27th of next month.
The newly selected SA Under-19 team took to the field against the SA Schools Colts side today, wrapping up the Kaya Majola Cricket Week. Most of the players in the team have already played in Bangladesh and know what to expect at the World Cup. The players are super excited.
I think we know what we're expecting from the guys there, so hopefully we can get a win in there.
The selectors opted for experience and balance as they aim to defend their World Cup title.
Another big factor is if you look at the balance, we've got 6 frontline seamers, we've got 5 spinners in the squad. So I think the balance of the side, we've got quite a lot of all-rounders, and it's something that we're very deliberate about. We know where South African cricket needs to be in the next couple of years.
The Under-19 squad will take part in the Cricket South Africa Cubs Week in Stellenbosch next month as part of preparation for the World Cup. Ivwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
And that's a wrap from the sports desk. Up next is your continental weather forecast.
Well, that's your continental weather forecast. And today we ask you a very important question. We ask you that question: how can fathers play an active role in their children's lives? Let's take a look at some of the comments that came through here. This one from Golden. It says, SABC Newsroom, fathers should make time to spend with their children, and not all mothers keep their children away from the father. Hashtag, I know what I am saying. So says Golden Maya.
Blessing Gina says, SABC Newsroom, fathers should love their children and protect them.
This one from Pat Liddell says, fathers should have conversations with their children, speak and listen. Communication is the basis should be of all relationships.
The next one coming in comes from Brett Lee. That says, Yaya, that's by giving single dads access to our kids, especially this time of the year.
And that should be the key, yeah, special time. Alapan Rapiti says, by being good time models and teaching them good values. I don't know what good time models mean. Maybe good role models, that's probably that.
Or maybe good time management.
Good time management, it could be as well, because you just don't want to be an ATM. So says Alapan Rapiti. If there's more, do we have some more of these? I don't think. I think that's probably the last one that we got there from Robert Trapiti on the Twitter page. So thank you for all your comments that you've sent through to us here at SABC Newsroom. So be a good father out there. Go out and really spend some time, some family time. I think it's always key. That's where we got to leave it. From myself, Elvis Preslin.
And Marumo Kekan.
We'll see you bright and early, same time, same place, tomorrow morning, right here on Newsroom. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.